On Monday evening, Bee heard her husband return from work. His way home was almost half an hour longer than hers, so she always arrived first. She walked into the kitchen where Dave had just come in from the garage. He was preparing himself a drink. She watched him carefully and then decided to make herself a drink too. When she was finished, she left it on the table and walked over to the back of Dave, who was already relaxing in one of the chairs in the kitchen. Bee hugged him tightly. "You are the greatest blessing in my life." Bee released her embrace and moved to the other side of the table so that she could see his face. "Wow, this is definitely better than just 'hello, dear' or 'how was your day?'" Dave's smile was wide and infectious. His mood immediately changed from a serious worker to a carefree, happy one. Bee always had that effect on him. He took a long sip of his drink. The first sign that something was wrong was the look on his wife's face. They usually exchanged smiles. He smiled widely, and her face was tense, serious, and worried. He was sure she had made herself a drink, but he was nowhere to be seen. He didn't understand what it meant. He knew that his smile had disappeared and was replaced by a raised eyebrow inviting an explanation. Bee rubbed her hands together slowly, like a scout trying to start a fire. Her lips stretched painfully, revealing her teeth. All that was missing was a hiss. When her lips closed again, her brows furrowed. She was clearly worried, although it was much more difficult for her to say what was on her mind. Dave, I need to ask you something. I wish I didn't have to do this. What I ask of you may be impossible. I love you. I will always love you. I will never leave you, and I don't want to hurt you, but I know I will." Dave's expression became tense. "How can I help you, Bee?" His voice was full of sincerity. Bee coughed, involuntarily at his display of concern. "Wow, this answer makes my request 10 times worse." Dave immediately became nervous. "Darling, are you sick? Did they tell you that we can beat this?" "They are often wrong. Now they cure 2/3 of all cancers if they are detected in time." Then he repeated even more sincerely, "How can I help you, Bee?" Bee felt dizzy. She felt bad. She tried to shake her head. His intense display of faith shocked her. "No, Dave, I'm not sick. Although perhaps I am sick at heart. I've been having heart problems for a while now. Maybe I'm having an emotional heart attack." She looked away for a moment, finding it difficult to look Dave in the face as she forced herself to look at him again. "No, dear, this is not a medical problem. I want to take some time for myself, for the weekend." She tried to hold his gaze, "and I want to go alone." Dave looked puzzled. Bee's eyes filled with tears as she continued. "Here's the worst part, dear. I ask you to take a leap of faith in me, but I won't do the same in return. I don't want you to know anything about this weekend." Bee found it difficult to continue, having trouble even swallowing before speaking again. "I know this will upset you. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't hurt you. But I know that you have a wonderful imagination, and it will work against you in this situation." Bee could see that it was already having an effect. He looked at her as if she was moving away from him. She wanted to fall through the ground. "Can I ask a question?" Dave was both confused and angry. His tone made it clear that he was going to ask anyway. Bee didn't know how to interpret his question, thinking that he was trying to respect her request not to ask about the weekend. She nodded. "Bee, are you having any problems?" "What don't I know? Maybe debts, or something terrible from your past, or something related to your relatives. Maybe it's a situation where the police would normally get involved, but you've been told that if you tell, your loved ones will get hurt." Bee almost burst into tears from love for Dave. "Oh God, you're trying to justify me. You trust me, and now I'll hit you where it hurt." She took a deep breath. "I'm not in any trouble. There is no external pressure forcing me to do this. There is no one else to blame." She pressed her lips tightly, keeping her gaze on her husband. "Darling, there is a question from my past. Darling, there is a question from my past. He doesn't fit into the categories you described. I desperately want to find the answer to this. I want to say as little as possible about this, but I understand that this leaves room for misinterpretation. I already told you that I love you, and I want to assure you that I have no intention of ever repeating this. I just need one weekend." Dave, having calmed down a little, asked the next question with restraint. "Did you have the feeling that you would do this from the very beginning? You knew in advance that this would happen, but you didn't tell me." She bit her lip again. It probably depends on interpretation. Honestly, this is all a matter of interpretation. Now that I've made my request, you decide everything. I can ask, but I cannot calm you down. I cannot make you think the way I would like. If I could, I would take away all your worries. But I understand too well that I am bringing down a whole barrel of anxiety on you. Be paused for a moment, then continued as soon as she could. I myself don't know how to perceive some moments. I don't fully understand what exactly I'm doing and why, so I can imagine how much more of an impact it will have on you when I ask you to fly blind. His behavior changed. From extremely caring, he became more irritable. Dave sighed heavily, clearly unhappy. B, maybe I would agree to fly blind, but it would be nice to know at least something more. B looked at him with the increasing panic. Unable to contain his surprise, Dave asked a question. Are you going to do something that you know will hurt me? B cringed inwardly, praying not to reveal her inner doubts. She tried not to show any emotion that could aggravate his pain, but she knew that he already saw many alarming possibilities. Her eyebrows knitted together as a sign of sadness. That's the whole problem. I know that if I tell you everything, it will only give you more reasons to ask, more questions that I don't want to answer or can't answer right now. And I understand that my request is cruel and will drive you to madness. I love you, and if you don't let me do this, I will still love you. But I pray that you will not forbid it. Be fidgeted with her hands nervously, glancing out the window at the calm, sunny morning outside. Then she turned again to her beloved. Dave, I struggled with this decision for a long time. I thought that this problem had disappeared, that everything had been resolved. I'm sure everything will work out well in the end. If I get what I want in a week, in a year, in a decade, we will sit here together until we play harps somewhere on the clouds. Her lips curled painfully into a smile before she hastily added, darling, I just want to understand my own nature more. And you can't share this with... Dave was surprised, not believing that her confession could somehow calm him down. B closed her eyes. I was thinking about telling you everything. I honestly thought, but the only way I could think of to do it would be either terrible or painful. In any case, you will start looking for changes in me, even if there are none, just like me. If things don't go the way I hope, I wouldn't want you to see my first reaction to it. Dave, I hope that everything between us will remain as before. If the answer to my question is not what I expect, I don't want you to see that and change your attitude towards me. I promise it won't change anything in the long run. I love you, and love is the most important thing to me. But if I get answers, I want everything to go back to the way it was 10 minutes before this conversation. I hope and in a sense believe that everything will work out for the best. But if not, I'm afraid you'll see something and you'll suffer from it for the rest of your life. Like I've been suffering from it for half of mine. In other words, I don't want to be cured while infecting you. B was wearing a silk kimono. She spread her hands in a half gesture. Let me give you an example of how confused everything is in my head. I wore this because you like the way I look in it. I knew this conversation would be difficult, and I wanted to prove my sincerity to you later. But I'm rethinking everything, and it extends to every aspect of my life. It all stems from one single question that I hope to get answered during my weekend. The kimono is just an example of my condition. Here's the problem. If I gave you my body first before we spoke, wouldn't that be manipulation? I don't want this at all. Even if it would make you happy, I don't want to soften you up or make you think that I was trying to do that. But being dressed like that while talking is distracting, even though I intended it to be a promise. The promise that I belong to you and want to please only you, to show that I am yours. Before B could continue, Dave asked, Does sex have anything to do with this? She answered, dejectedly. I think now, yes. Maintaining eye contact, she added, honestly, I'd like to take sex out of this conversation. I love you completely. You are my only one. This is beyond any question. It is carved into my heart. She stretched her arms across the table, taking his hands in hers. I don't want another man. It has nothing to do with men at all. No betrayal at all. This is not about that. She saw his body relax a little. Forgive me for making you think differently. B, you have to admit that your request wrapped in secrecy and, well, the way you're dressed seems to hint that you're trying to make amends for sexual guilt with sexual currency. Dave said, not hiding his displeasure. She blushed to the roots of her hair. I was afraid that you would think that way. I just said that. Oh, Dave, there is a huge difference between sex and intimacy. Just because I gave you such thoughts at all, regardless of how I was dressed, I wanted to give myself to you after our conversation, so that you would not doubt that I was completely yours. Dave was confused. Some of her words sounded ambiguous. Perhaps this is exactly the rethinking she was talking about. He chose his words carefully. So reinforcing the theme of sex through revealing clothing and then reinforcing it with real sex is not an attempt to deepen doubts, but your way of dispelling them. Isn't this like trying to save a sinking ship by flooding it with water? B became serious. I leave you the right to make two decisions. First, whether to let me go or not. I'm not saying I'm leaving. I say that I really need this. But I ask your permission. The decision is yours. Secondly, you must decide whether you consider me completely yours. I myself sow doubts in you, but only you can dispel them. To prove it, I am completely in your hands. If you want me to do anything else to prove it, just tell me. Be stopped, and it was as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I made my request, and it turned out terrible. I don't want to talk about this anymore today. Now I am moving on to prove to you that I am all yours completely. I need you to be convinced of this because this is also your decision, although this is my main goal and desire. I know it's a terrible request. I don't want her to make you doubt what's important, that I'm crazy about you and that I'm happy to be your wife. Bea stood up and quietly walked to the counter, and when she returned, she placed a new drink in front of Dave, exactly the same as the one he had just drunk. It turned out that Bea made the drink not for herself, but for him. Now she stood next to him, theatrically moving the belt of her kimono to the side. The clothes opened, revealing her charms. She placed the belt around his neck, wrapping one hand around the loose ends as she handed him his drink with the other. Is this a change of topic that you can really take to heart? Bea asked in a hoarse voice, turning around and leaning over the table. Tuesday. They spent a wonderful night. Bea fell asleep lying on her husband's chest. In the morning, Dave carefully got out of bed so as not to wake her and began to get ready for work. Bea always had more time at home, both before and after work, since her commute was shorter. But when she woke up, he was no longer there. Although this was normal, she was overcome with panic that morning. She ran downstairs headboard, hoping that he had not left yet. When Bea burst into the kitchen, she saw Dave turn around with a fresh cup of coffee, a worried look on his face. The unexpected appearance of his completely naked wife tore him out of his anxious thoughts. Well, this is real room service. He laughed. Bea looked down, realizing that she was naked. She was embarrassed and tried to cover. Realizing that this was simply ridiculous, she froze awkwardly. Her awkwardness soon went away when she saw the way her husband was looking at her. She beamed at the way his gaze greedily absorbed her. "Damn, I should have gotten up earlier," he said in a hoarse whisper. Glancing at the clock and knowing it was time for him to leave, Bea suggested, "If you want, I promise to make it up to you tonight." The hope in her voice acted like an aphrodisiac. Dave shook his head with a smile. "Stay like this until I leave, okay? This will help." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat from his words, which felt something ominous. "Bea, I don't want to start this conversation now. This won't help at work," Dave paused. "I'm talking about our conversation yesterday, not your special service this morning." They both smiled. "You asked me to honestly take a leap of faith. You leave the decision to me, although I admit that my head is still spinning from the very request. Another mitigating factor is that you seem to understand how outrageous your request, but you asked anyway, and it's driving me crazy. My thoughts are running in circles." He raised his hand as if indicating a timeout and laughingly tried to soften the situation. "I really don't want to dive into this now, although it's very difficult to resist. What I'm trying to say is that you asked an honest question. And even though it seems half criminal, I will try to deal with it intelligently. But damn, you should understand how hard it is to do this when you keep me in the dark." She nodded, looking miserable and sympathetic. Seeing her expression, he continued, "Fine. Understand that before I can get to the bottom of the matter, there are logistical and security issues that need to be addressed first." "Which ones, for example, dear?" B asked sincerely, "Can I call you while you're gone? Can I call any time?" And about 50 other questions, he raised his hand to stop her. "I don't want answers now, but when I get home," she nodded again. Dave could hardly restrain himself, but still asked, "B, what if I get hurt? Get hit by a bus while you're gone? Is there any way I can convey the news to you? You say you'll be back, but if you're gone until Monday and I get hit on Friday, everyone will start asking questions that you don't want to answer. Where were you, and what did you do? I'm guessing you won't answer the phone." It was a trap so he could find out if she would take her phone with her, so that he could at least determine what city she would be in. "If I can't call you, or you only want to text, should I start the message with the word emergency so you can read it right away?" Dave continued, trying to get her to talk. "We need to talk about these things." B sank heavily into her chair. Her big eyes were full of regret and apology, so much so that Dave again felt the urge to protect her, despite the pain of her terrible request. "B, I have no idea where you will be. We have to find out. Maybe you were going to tell me the city, but not the hotel. Not knowing where you are is a disaster. What if something serious happens? What if there's a storm or a terrorist? How can I know if you are in trouble or not?" B seemed remorseful and sympathetic, though she still didn't want to give any clues. "Darling, such things are unlikely to happen." Dave shook his head, dissatisfied with her flippant answer. "Honey, what if a chain of tornadoes starts? This really does happen, and without knowing where you went, I'll have to worry about all the possible threats. If the storm is in the southern part of the country, I will worry, because I don't know that you are in the north. If a plane crashes in the north, I'll think the worst, because I don't know that you're traveling by train in the south. Every oak tree that falls on the highway, every protest in the city, every event that goes wrong will potentially threaten you. And because I don't know where you are, I won't be able to rule out any of these scenarios. I will be forced to fight every one of them." His voice became more and more tense. B's eyes widened. "Oh, Dave, I thought about that." His look clearly said that he did not have much faith in her caring for him in this situation. Her face flushed with shame. She had obviously thought through her plan in detail, but worrying about her husband took her much less time. And what's worse, the things she thought about Dave turned out to be more in her interests than in his. "Dave, I'm terribly sorry. I owe you an apology for this. Your concerns about my whereabouts are correct." She bit her lip. "That is, all your fears are fair. You were not unreasonable in any way. I know it's all my fault. You're right. This issue needs to be resolved. I'll give you the answer tonight, or you'll cancel the trip," Dave said, with a clear threat in his voice. She answered in the most apologetic tone. "I'll give you the answer tonight." Dave took a deep breath as if he couldn't get enough air. It was obvious that he was not happy with either this conversation or her answer. He looked at her with his head raised in irritation and his jaw clenched. Turning sharply, he headed towards the door, leaving behind his cup of coffee. "Dave, you forgot something." "Who would say?" he answered, turning to B and seeing her huge, guilty eyes and outstretched hand with his cup. He sighed heavily and said over his shoulder, "I'll get coffee in the office," and left the kitchen, closing the door to the garage behind him. B looked down at her cup of coffee, black and ominous as her thoughts. Now it's as if she has repainted their marriage in the same dark colors. She thought, "You just gave Dave the same thing. You gave him yesterday a shot in the stomach. You make a great wife." She continued to blame herself for how things had gone wrong. Tuesday evening, when Dave returned home, B had already prepared his favorite cocktail and announced that she was going to cook one of his favorite dishes. Lost in his thoughts, Dave didn't tell her he loved her like he always did, before heading upstairs to change into comfortable clothes. Only then did B realize that she hadn't told him that she loved him either. With trembling hands, she closed her eyes. When Dave returned, B almost shouted that she loved him, and was immediately embarrassed by how awkward it sounded. "Sorry, Dave. This is all putting a lot of pressure on me." He nodded, expecting something serious to be said. "Dinner is ready," she said, placing a plate of his favorite dish in front of him. Not wanting to rush their meal, she explained, "Sorry, I guess I'm not giving you time to rest. I want too much to prove my love to you. I'm afraid you've been thinking all day about how I ruined everything this morning. Dave took a piece of food. It was delicious. But before he could praise her, her words confirmed his guess that the troubles had just begun. I called my parents. I told them I was leaving for the weekend and gave them my contact information. I ask you not to call them, but if something happens, you can contact them. I hope this proves that I trust you. A loud clang sounded as Dave's hand clattered onto the table, slamming his fork into the plate. B looked away, feeling defeated. There was not a shadow of amusement in his gaze. He was just as surprised by the sound as she was. Dave shook his head. Apparently telling someone else didn't prove that she trusted him. He said with such calm that it worried her, "Could you tell me what part of the country you'll be in, so I don't have to call your parents and ask if you're in danger of the Canadian fires? This might lead them to believe that we are in P problems." B croaked in fear. Dave's eyebrows rose in surprise, then furrowed into an angry expression. "My wife is going on a secret vacation without me. She doesn't say where she's going, with whom, and what she's going to do. I would say we have serious problems." B was so shocked that she could barely find the words. "Dave, I love you." Dave's eyes narrowed. B swallowed as if she were a character standing opposite Clint Eastwood. "B, I'll leave it to you to reconcile our last two statements. I can't make them interconnected." "But Dave, you know I love you. You can't doubt it. Are you still planning to go?" She answered in a quiet voice. "Dave, what changed? I still need to go." Dave looked at her again. He felt bad that she didn't have enough words. He felt B wanted to say something, but she was scared. His growing irritation didn't make it any easier for her. "So be it. I thought everything was fine with us literally this weekend. On Monday, I found out that you have been keeping a secret for a long time. Even worse, you planned actions for yourself alone. Even worse, you want a vacation from me, perhaps from our marriage, and I'm afraid of your marriage vows. There is some reason why. You want to go away this weekend, but you don't want to discuss it with me. Today you say that telling someone else part of the secret is a sign of trust in me. I think this proves just the opposite. Now for dinner. Does it resemble any of the ones we had throughout our marriage? And after all this, you say that nothing has changed. Are you kidding me?" When B doesn't answer, he added, "You seem to only think about your vacation from marriage, but you don't see how it affects, or you don't care." B was pale, too scared to say anything, and this angered Dave even more. It was always a great dish. Previously, it was special for holidays and celebrations. "I only ate one piece, and before I could tell you how delicious it was, you started right away with your damn trip. Don't you like it?" B tried desperately to please him. "Not anymore. Do we have anything else to eat?" Confused, she tried to remember what she could cook quickly. She suggested, "I can make hot dogs or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, if that's your thing." She didn't expect his poisonous reaction. With eyes full of anger, like Clint Eastwood himself, Dave flushed. "I liked it until I completely lost my appetite." "Don't worry about hot dogs or peanut butter and jelly. It could cost you precious dollars for your big solo vacation. No, I don't need to prepare anything because it looks like that's what you're going for." He looked at his plate. "Take this away. There's no point in wasting good food on me. Nobody appreciates good things. They are only interested in what else they can get. Besides, I definitely won't be able to taste it when there's only ash in my mouth, and I'm definitely not in the mood for a holiday right now." Without giving her a chance to answer, he pushed away from the table, stood up, and left the kitchen. B sat back in her chair next to her husband's half-drunk cocktail and untouched dinner, thinking, "You did it again, you fool. You didn't even tell him, 'Hey, honey, it's nice to have you home,' or 'How was your day?' You immediately proceeded to convince him that you didn't value him, quite the opposite of what you wanted. Their pleasant routine was ruined." B stirred her food. She wasn't hungry either. She poured out the cocktail, thinking it was inappropriate now. She slowly cleaned the kitchen and put everything back in place to give Dave time to cool down. She couldn't help but notice that he didn't offer to help clean up after dinner, like he always did. Although they took turns cooking, B was sure she wouldn't try a bite of what Dave cooked that week. Damn, she thought. Damn, damn, damn. Finally, she went to look for Dave. She wasn't going to push him. She just wanted to be close because she felt best next to him. B was obedient and truly repentant that evening. She came up with various ways to stay close to Dave, although she could see that her presence did not particularly please him. Gradually, he began to soften, although there was no warmth in his behavior. Dave knew Bea was nervous about her trip. He was also worried, but for a completely different reason. Showing sincere sympathy, Bea decided to ask as they went upstairs to bed. "Honey, I hate asking this, and I promise won't insist anymore, but have you made your decision yet?" She fully expected him to slam the door on her, telling her not to go. She would somehow deal with the consequences, but at least they would begin to overcome this terrible situation. She couldn't think of a better way to apologize than to end this nightmare. Hell no. Dave noticed that Bea was worried. She wasn't sure if he said she couldn't go or if he hadn't made a decision yet. Obviously, she was expecting something more specific, and judging by her appearance, something negative. Now she was at a dead end, not knowing what to answer, and he, although he did not see anything funny in their situation, still laughed. "To be clear, no, I haven't decided yet. This doesn't mean no, you won't go." Before she could get excited or bring up the dreaded bedtime topic again, he warned. "Though that's my default attitude, and that's what you'll get if you demand an answer now." Bea answered timidly, trying to sound as caring as she actually felt. "Don't you want to talk about? I would like to help you feel calmer. I understand it was a big ask, too big." It didn't sound like anger. It was just a statement of fact. But somehow it sounded like it was spoken from a mountaintop. Distressed, Bea turned away and he added, "Are you going to answer my additional questions? I wouldn't want to." She was grateful that her voice didn't waver. "Then I see no point in discussing this further. Honestly, how is this even possible?" Dave went to the bathroom to get ready for bed. Bea realized, wow, Dave has just outlined the boundaries of any further discussion or blessing of his own. It should be a two-way conversation in which I answer his questions. He also made it clear that without these answers, his answer would be no. But I have already confessed more than I wanted, and he just said no way as things stand. Damn, how did that happen so fast? How did he get the ball in my court so quickly? As much as Bea was worried, she smiled as she looked at the bathroom door and her husband on the other side. She was impressed by his clarity and the lack of offense or sarcasm in his answer. Bea was surprised by the structure of his answer. She didn't need to apologize. She didn't need to explain anything. She didn't need to say a word or give him further answers. All she had to do was not go. She appreciated this elegant way out that he offered her. She sighed sadly, realizing that she could not accept him. She should have let him sleep that night. She felt that at least she owed him this to ensure that he had a good night's sleep for trying to help her get out of the corner into which she had painted herself. Wednesday. The next evening, Dave came home and blurted out the phrase that he apparently decided to say as soon as he entered the house. "Don't say a word, Bea. We can discuss this after dinner, but I'll tell you when. Until then, let's at least try to eat and chat in peace." Nervous since his arrival, Bea reacted to his words as if she had been slapped in the face. Dave lowered his head as he noticed, "Sorry, dear. I just couldn't get it in my face again as soon as I walked in." "I did not mean that." Bea nodded sadly. "Everything is fine. It's good for me to feel what I did to you. I'm so sorry, Dave. I'm really sorry." "No, there is no need to talk about it, especially now. Tell me better. Have you prepared something?" "I have a lot of leftovers, but I wasn't even sure you'd come home for dinner." "Come on, Bea. I wasn't one to be dramatic. I was just reacting to what hit me." She literally shrank. "I'm so sorry, Dave. I don't." Wait, honey. We are confused about this. Let's start again. I don't want to hear a word about it until I say so, but we'll talk after dinner." "Dave, really? You could have just said no, and we would." "That may happen, Bea, but I think there is a big festering wound here, and I need to find out more about it, whether you stay or go." "Dave, I'm just amazed that you're still thinking about this. I ruined everything so much. Enough. We're starting to talk about this again." Ashamed, feeling like a child, Bea looked away. In complete sincere repentance, she replied, "Oh, sorry, sir." Dave's eyes widened. "Sir? Holy God, when you call me sir, this is definitely something on the level of the apocalypse." Dave couldn't help but let a satisfied smile appear on his face. He smiled back with difficulty. "Dave, I know you're joking, but I'm afraid you don't understand what this means to me. I'm willing to call you sir or daddy or master if it helps us get things back to normal, and I'll do it in front of my friends and family. Well, this could be fun. Let's stick with this attitude for now. So, honey, do you want to go out to eat or warm up some leftovers? Dave, you don't seem so disappointed in me. Is this really true? B's expression was a mixture of hope and skepticism. Yes, dear. I don't want to be negative. I want to normalize our relationship. We clearly need to talk. I want to start this conversation by being our normal selves. You are my favorite person, and I would like to enjoy your company before we return to discussion. B beamed as if he had given her a diamond. Oh yes, Dave, can we please stay home? I'll warm up too, she practically begged. Of course, dear. Can I make you a drink while you heat up your food? Now her face softened into an expression of extreme relief. You often call me baby. I didn't push you away, but I was so worried. He walked over and hugged her tightly. When they separated, he was about to kiss her, but noticed that she was crying. B explained, It's okay, Dave. I needed it so much. Then a mischievous smile appeared on her face. Thank you, master. He laughed, kissed her, and hurried upstairs to change, glad that they would have a normal dinner again. After dinner and a leisurely second cocktail, Dave made them both a glass of ice water. Taking her hand, he led his wife into the living room. Dave began cautiously, I don't like to bring up this topic. I'll be polite regarding your request for a vacation. Yes, Dave. B was really surprised that he brought this up. It was hard for her to see how he winced as he uttered the following words. Are you ready to answer additional questions? B suddenly felt like she was about to burst into tears when she heard that question again. Dave, dear, I already explained that I don't want to answer more questions. And I explained that I couldn't let you go without additional answers. B felt the heat engulf her face and neck. She was ashamed, even disgusted, and not in a good way. She blinked back tears. Okay, so you don't want to answer questions. I really don't want to. I'm sorry. Her voice sounded not just apologetic, it was full of despair. Let's see if we can find a compromise. What is he saying? Was he trying to help her? Why did he do this after everything she put him through? Dave's face took on a thoughtful expression before he continued. Given that you brought my attention to your actions, I couldn't help but notice that you had a suitcase in your closet. I'm guessing you're planning a trip. As far as I know, you and I don't have any trips planned. Can you explain this? Dave, I didn't mean to challenge your decision. I just wanted to be prepared for any outcome. B tried to fake a smile, but it only came out as a grimace. It killed B. B that she could tell from the tone of his answer that he didn't believe her explanation. She wondered if she planned to leave even if he said no. After all, she asked herself this question when she packed her suitcase. Dave continued to speak in an even voice. I also couldn't help but notice that there's a lock on your suitcase. To be honest, this prompted me to check if the keys were there. I was just checking to make sure I had access to the keys, not having any intention of opening your luggage. But B, there are no keys. I didn't mean to do that. I'm completely lost. B looked absolutely miserable. Dear, a week ago, I would not have agreed with you. But now you really scare me. She wiped the tears from her eyes. It was no longer possible to stop them. I can't stop thinking about two things. Either there's something in this suitcase that might explain why you're coming, or there's something you don't want me to see. Could there really be sexy lingerie for your secret trip where you swear there won't be sex without your husband? B was now shaking all over. Dave was so kind. How could she deal with this? Since B didn't respond, Dave made her another offer. How about it, honey, to make me feel calmer? If you go without my blessing, it will be a serious signal to me that something is wrong in our marriage. Very serious. Understood. Or if you bring sexy things with you instead of normal, comfortable things, it will make me think that you lied to me about not planning to have sex. You made it clear to me that it's not worth thinking about this, both the second and the third. B was well aware that she was avoiding answering the two most important questions her husband had raised. WH, what's the third one? Dave? She asked, trembling. B, if you don't want to answer questions, but you want to win back my trust, and if you still want to prove to me that it's really okay to go on a trip, despite how terrible it all sounds for our future, she held her breath. If you don't want to answer questions, do this. Go get those damn keys and show me what you packed in there. Now she was shaking with fear, especially when she saw how much Dave hoped she would comply with his simple request. Dave, I think this would be a very bad idea. She saw his shoulders sag. Almost instantly, he stood up straight again. His voice betrayed disappointment, despite the fact that he tried to speak calmly. Then why are you demonstratively displaying this suitcase in a prominent place? Why are you specifically drawing my attention to something that seems to spit in my face for my love for you? What have I done to deserve this kind of treatment? She let out a moan. Dave stood up, still trying to control his emotions and show her respect, but he was hurt and angry. 3. B, how do you even feel about me? By placing this suitcase so that I could notice it, locking it and hiding the keys. It was as if you showed your disrespect for me. Is my respect for you something important to you? B saw him clinging to his anger, using it to hide his pain. He was in pain and afraid that he was losing her. B understood all this. She tried to answer, but Dave didn't want to listen to her anymore. Leave it alone, B. Actions always speak louder than words. There's not much else to say here again. If you do not want to answer my questions, then my blessing for your trip has been withdrawn from now on. If you do decide to go, I will consider it a serious blow to our marriage. I have been more than patient, but I see too many unknowns accumulating. I think I was kind where other husbands would have long ago become angry or thrown out their wife. Honestly, it sounds like this is exactly what you want. You're practically begging for this to be away from me. You told me you wanted to go and you didn't want to explain anything. Perhaps the only question now is, when will you realize that you don't want to come home to me? He laughed bitterly. Or when you finally push me to such an extent that I myself don't want you to come back. B nearly collapsed to the mat floor at his suggestion that she might not want to come back to him. But his last words literally deprived her of air. Dave continued, we have one more night left, and then the decision will be yours. B, tomorrow I will give you my final answer. I have already made it clear what it will be in the absence of further discussions. And the absence of discussions does not mean that you will receive my permission, but this protracted conversation must be stopped. As far as I can see, only one of us is committed to our marriage. Only one of us is truly faithful now, and he's going to bed, because there's no point in continuing the conversation when the woman of his dreams is too busy with her secret plans to be honest with herself or her husband. B sank to the floor. Now it had all become much worse than she could have imagined. Dave slowly walked upstairs and took a long, relaxing shower. Drawing himself off and getting ready for bed, he left the bathroom to find B wearing some very sexy lingerie and getting into their bed. She looked very worried, even depressed, and in his opinion, this is how it should have been. He was in no hurry to go to bed. Taking the book, he threw back the sheets and threw his body onto the bed. And then he turned away from B, making it clear that she had been ignored. B was shocked. Dave had never treated her like that, but how could she answer him? She couldn't just say she loved him. She said this a few days ago, but everything that has happened since then has made these words meaningless. She has already said that she does not want to answer questions. Dave never even hinted that this state of affairs might be acceptable. Yes, please, I know you can hear me. Please listen to me at least a little. She put a trembling hand on his shoulder. Houston, that's where I'm going. She suddenly started sobbing. She opened her eyes and saw Dave looking at her with genuine concern. His eyes begged her to say, Houston is my doctor there. Dave frowned. Dr. Honey, all our doctors are here in the city. We don't live in Texas. He didn't understand and wasn't going to reproach her. Dave gave her more time. He saw her struggling and covered her hand with his to support her. B mentally thanked God for this, and my treatment from a doctor from college. Dave's blood froze. This was a chapter of her life that he knew nothing about. He knew she had gone to college there, but had never heard of her needing treatment. What kind of doctor did you have in college? Now he began to suspect that it was connected with the abortion. He cursed himself for such thoughts. This was not at all the way to support Be My Psychiatrist. B stared at him, hoping that he would understand. But how could he? She didn't tell him anything close to what he needed to know to understand. B, are you okay? No, it's not okay. I told you I was losing my mind, Dave. I'm losing my head. I thought that all this was in the past, but the question returned. It has grown to such a size that I can barely think clearly. I just didn't want it to hurt you. I wanted to come to you and explain everything, but now I can't. I need to complete my work with the doctors. You're welcome, Dave. She suddenly shook her head sharply. I'm not asking you for anything with this. I just want you to understand I'm not okay, but I love you. I love you more than anything in the world. And then she added the fatal word. But hearing that she said this, Bea grabbed her hair. Panicked, Bea threw off the sheets and ran out of the room. Dave was almost sure that she slammed the door to the guest room by accident, and not as a reaction to his recent words. Now he wondered if she would ever return to their bed. Dave walked slowly towards the guest room door. He knocked softly. In response, he did not hear any movements, only heavy and painful sobs. He tried the door, surprised that it was locked. Bea, can I come in? I won't ask any more questions today. I'll just support you. Some time passed, and he heard the crying become louder. Bea was approaching the door. He felt her press against the door. Were they Dave not now? I don't want you to see this. For now, let me handle this alone. You're welcome, Dave. This is wrong. I love you, Bea. Oh, Dave, that's all I want. He started to walk away when he heard her speak again. There's nothing right about this, Dave. That's why I need to go to Houston. I have to understand what to do, what I'm facing. I can't tell you how terribly sorry I am. There was a pause before he heard, I love you too, Dave. He felt her weight disappear from the other side of the door. He listened as her sobs gradually subsided. Dave waited until he was sure she had made it to the bed before he left. Dave couldn't sleep. There was a real battle going on in his head. He then stood on one side, then on the other. He believed he had taken decisive action. If Bea didn't want him, he wanted to know that and move on. He didn't want to live in a marriage where she cheated on him, and he thought she didn't want that either. Everything should have become clear soon. It didn't matter how much he loved her. He needed her to love him back. He wasn't going to stop her anymore if she left without his consent. That would be Dave's answer. There's no point in living a lie. He had one last step left, which he planned to take tomorrow evening. Dave was adamant on several points. He loved Bea madly and didn't want things to end badly because of his actions. He could stand his ground without being rude. This thought tormented him, especially at a time when their life together could be coming to an end. Dave got out of bed and went downstairs, taking out a thin tool to open the guest room door from the outside. Then he returned upstairs and crossed the corridor. He opened the door to the guest room and saw his wife, who was simply falling apart emotionally. Her face was buried in the pillow, muffling the almost animal sounds of suffering. Bea shuddered at his touch. Her eyes were first filled with fear that she was not alone and then replaced with sadness when she saw him. Come on, Bea, you need to be with me. He put his hand on her cheek and she pressed her face to it. No more talking today, just us together. Her face, although broken, lit up with gratitude. He picked her up and she let out a surprised sigh mixed with a suppressed sob. You should sleep in my arms. Dave carried her back to their bed. She repeated over and over again that she loved him until she fell asleep from complete exhaustion. Dave joined her, but not before wondering what was wrong with his wife. Thursday, after a modest dinner, Dave asked his wife with as much encouragement as he could muster. Since we're at an impasse, you want my answer without giving yours. How would you feel about volunteering to do something unusual to strengthen my trust in you and prove my devotion? Bea perked up, expecting some kind of sexual favor. Okay, she was delighted, deciding that he wanted to stop talking and cancel the trip. Perhaps her trip is being discussed again. Maybe she can get rid of this feeling of obsessiveness. What does her wonderful man want? Dave cringed inwardly. It was a strange idea with an even stranger plan. If Bea didn't agree to the idea, he hoped it would at least open up the possibility of talking about what was going on. Well, here we go, he thought, before asking, how about a chastity belt? What? Bea wasn't sure she heard correctly. Bea, that seems reasonable. This is a solution that will allow you to go without having to answer questions, taking sex out of the equation. Well, mostly. Completely stunned, Bea hesitated. At that moment, she felt his mood change. His gaze seemed to cut right through her. Her hands rose in a gesture signaling that her confusion was not resistance. She mumbled, Dave, honey, that really doesn't sound reasonable. Dave knew his eyebrows rose so high that if he had any on them, the coins would have flown across the room. He tried to speak in a supportive tone without hiding the hardness in his voice. No more reasonable than a secret vacation from your husband and possibly your marriage. His quiet voice sounded like thunder, echoing in the valley. Bee exhaled loudly as if the wind had escaped from her. Dave, there are no men there. This is not about sex. Not really. I don't want a man. I don't want another partner. I don't want a Shetland pony, and I definitely don't want a yoga goat. There was silence. She looked at him with frightened and uncertain eyes about the same way he looked at her. What? Would you like a Shetland pony? What the hell is a yoga goat? What are you talking? Dave wasn't angry. His face was frozen. She incapacitated him. Bee stuttered. I'm not sure where that came from. I had an uncle who always promised me a Shetland pony when I was 10. My mom was afraid that I really wanted him. I couldn't convince her that it wasn't so. Dave looked at her with the same expression. What are you talking about? Frustrated, Bee muttered. Yoga goats are little goats that crawl all over you while you do yoga poses. Dave seemed even more confused, looking miserable. Bee whispered, These little goats are very cute. Until those poor little bastards eat your garden and gore you for the next week. This is how you treat me. Bee's face changed instantly. It became gloomy. Dave couldn't read it. She was on the verge of a breakdown. He shook his head for a few moments. It took effort to get the conversation back on track. Dave tried to give her a disarming smile, although his eyes showed that this was a serious conversation. It's not that I want to be too cruel to these Shetland ponies, but I don't see any reason to be cruel to myself. Besides, Bee, that's fair. You have the keys to what's hidden in your suitcase, the keys to a hotel room that you can let anyone into, and you already have the keys to my heart. I will have the keys to what you promised only to me. I won't have to worry about your hotel guests or doing yoga with the baby goats. It's not exactly equal, and I'll still get the worst part, but at least I'll have something on my side. You get something extra that you don't talk about, and I keep only part of what belongs to me, including a little peace of mind. Bee, it's going to look pretty bad if you refuse to give me these keys and this trust after everything you've done. Bee came to her senses a little, but had no idea what to say. Dave didn't give her a chance. He was still talking. I see no reason why I should be in a situation where I would think that my wife is cheating on me. I had opportunities to be with other women, but I didn't take them. I assumed you had the same chances and made the same decision. But now you don't say it directly. You don't show what you took with you. You locked your suitcase. Now I know it will be Houston. Thanks for that. But I don't have the hotel address or room number. You didn't answer any more questions and continued to insist that you wouldn't be with a man. But to be honest, you yourself mentioned ponies, and now you don't deny them. He couldn't resist his joke. She was just what he needed to relieve the tension and nerves that now engulfed him in the presence of the person with whom he had previously felt most at ease. He burst out laughing. Bee involuntarily followed him. They were both relieved that they could laugh. Bee, I'm trying so hard, honey, especially after last night. I'm trying to make sure everything works out for us. I'm trying to keep us together. And if I have to, I'll try to take that leap of faith for you. I'm trying to keep this conversation light, but we don't have time anymore. We must cut through this tangle of worries and find a path that will be acceptable to both of us. Bee felt completely relieved, although exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. When Bee didn't respond, Dave spoke again. When we were talking about where you would be earlier, you realized that I was worried about not being able to find you if something bad happened. Your answer was to tell your parents, not me. You said you trust me not to call your parents and ask them where you are, but you don't trust me to know it myself. We both know you lied to them. Of course, she said that you would be in Houston for the weekend, but she probably told them that it was due to work or school and not for the real reason. Bee blushed and looked down, which means we've already established that you're lying about this trip. Bee's head shot up in shock. She stuttered in defense. I just didn't want to tell anyone anything. Yes, Dave said with a hint of disgust, because I didn't want to lie. But you ended up in this position because you had already decided not to tell the truth. Bee rubbed her temples. Dave, I don't want to make this even bigger, but do you still trust me? He almost answered sharply, but to his surprise, he saw that she was sincerely asking this question. With a broken heart, she wanted to know how badly she had hurt them both. Oh my God, B, do you trust me is one of those weird questions that contradicts itself. She looked at him in bewilderment. You trust someone until that person questions whether you, quote, trust them, and then you start to think that they did something untrustworthy. Half the time when a person asks about trust, the result is that trust decreases. But honey, do you really trust me more? Dave reluctantly replied, no. B shuddered, although she expected it. She tried to prevent events from happening, hoping that they could still be saved. You say you don't want me to leave. It was already too late for this. Everything only got worse. Luckily for B, Dave was still involved in trying to figure it all out. He didn't give up on B or their marriage. I haven't answered this question yet, but no, I don't trust you like I used to. You, in fact, lied by suppressing the truth. You want me to trust you to do whatever you want, wherever you want, until I forced you to tell the truth. If you were in trouble, I wouldn't know whether you were in Chicago or the Middle East. Obviously, you stopped trusting me and almost stopped respecting me. B looked up at him, trying to say something, but couldn't find the words. B, you know this hurts me and both of us. But what's the difference? You want to do what you want without caring about my feelings or how it affects us. The very attitude shows that you don't love me as much as I thought. This changed me too. I love you, but I don't trust you anymore. If you cared about us, you should have stayed and tried to win back my trust. This means telling what's really going on. If you leave, I will learn the sad truth. Dave looked at her as if he was calculating a complex equation. I answered your original question, but you will have to answer the second. I will not stop you from going. I may have been living a lie this whole time. I need to know how big this lie is. It seems this trip will be an indicator. B said thoughtfully, Dave, how did you manage to make such a U-turn? Now it's all on me again. I have to prove my loyalty, instead of you having to prove that you believe in me, which is what I thought you would like to show. She shook her head in confusion. Dave spread his arms to the sides. B, do you think you're acting reliably? If you did everything you could for us, would you advise us to stay or leave? Do you think your advice to us now would actually be good for both of us? She lowered her head. But honey, I'm going to do everything in my power to do the right thing in this situation. Will you try? Are you sure? Okay, love of my life and my dear wife, which hotel will you stay at? This should be basic information for any spouse who leaves the other. B looked at him with huge, frightened eyes. Dave answered her with the same look of complete bewilderment. See, you're not going to tell me. You are no longer doing what is right for me, because the plan itself is wrong for me. B's eyes narrowed, as if the fact was too vivid to. B, do you think what we're doing now is helping us? We're at a dead end. If you really don't plan to have sex, then I don't think having a chastity belt will be a big problem. My request seems insignificant compared to yours. B began to cry, and her quiet tears quickly turned into huge, sobbing, shaking sobs. I swear to you, I am not going to share our intimacy with anyone. Dave looked at B so intently that she couldn't stand his gaze. What does it mean? This sounds like a play on words. Share our intimacy, define intimacy, and then say what it means to share it. Is intimacy just you and me? Is sharing our intimacy like joining a group or having a third one? Sounds like you're trying to find a loophole. B cried even harder. Dave continued, what about your intimacy? Is your intimacy something separate from ours? If you only share yours, does that mean you haven't shared our common intimacy? Are you trying to come up with some semantic excuse to be with someone else without it being considered cheating? B sobbed more and more. Dave couldn't stop speaking out, was too important. He felt like he was fighting for their marriage. And B didn't offer a single argument that could dissuade him. He continued, there are obvious categories for potential partners such as men. We've already ruled out most of the other common options, but we've never discussed other women. Now, this seems especially noticeable considering we even mentioned ponies. Do you think that if you cheat with a woman, it won't be cheating? Do you think that doesn't count? He allowed himself to pause to exhale. I'm giving you a chance to rule out that option right now. B's shoulders shook with her sobs. Dave wasn't sure if she could answer, but he wasn't going to stop. Too much had accumulated. If you're planning an affair with a woman, she will touch you. Isn't that considered intimacy? Or will it be a case of sharing only your intimacy and not ours? If she feels your soft skin, your private parts, if she runs her tongue over you, if you lie in the same bed or have some kind of sexual contact, I would consider this intimacy. At a minimum, this would be a division of your intimacy, which in fact harms ours. After he finished, Dave realized that he had begun to speak a little more calmly. Now that he had spoken, he decided to soften his tone, but it was important that B understood the B. B, you mentioned earlier that there is a difference between sex and intimacy, but I don't cheat on anyone and I don't justify it by saying it's just sex. And I don't think you want me to start doing that. So it seems logical that I don't want you to start like that either. If we start allowing ourselves lovers on the side, I think we will break our commitment to each other. I think it will destroy everything we have, what remains after betrayal and loss of trust. Maybe we'll just be two people who bump into each other occasionally. Or maybe we'll just have sex, but without intimacy. B was shaking all over, her face turned white as a sheet. Dave thought her reaction was too strong, although he didn't raise his voice any louder than he did during football games. He knew he had said too much, but B never gave him a reason to shut up. Still, he lowered his tone for the sake of her peace of mind. You can remove some of my fears, which, as you yourself said, you did not want to sow in me. Or maybe it doesn't matter to you anymore. He let the words hang in the air, hoping that she would be willing to ease his concerns. But she was silent. Of course, she would not want to leave him in the fears that she herself had. She couldn't seem to connect these simple facts. Dave looked forward to the time when he could sort everything out for her. I understand that a chastity belt may be uncomfortable, but considering how attached we both are to each other, it might even be a little arousing. You will miss me very much by the time you return. I know you said there wouldn't be any men there, but if you were suddenly going on some wild experiment, it would give you the opportunity to stay in control and avoid something more that you might not want, or even avoid loss of control. These consequences probably seem terrible to you, and the very thought of such a situation seems quite disgusting to me. I don't think your trip to be with someone else for the weekend is smart. I don't understand how you can expect me to approve of this, especially since you are deliberately keeping me in the dark. And don't be surprised if I have dark thoughts. You yourself put me in this situation, and you yourself admitted it at the beginning of this nightmare. B, you're playing with a very dangerous mixture. The combination of a lie, albeit hidden, with possible betrayal, is deadly. Add to that the lack of respect for me if you think this is all acceptable, and that's 3 strikes. B sobbed and fell to her knees, covering her face with her hands. She moaned through her sobs, I love you, I swear I love you, I swear, all I need is you. And I thought you still needed this trip. She tried to catch her breath and calm down. This trip has become much more necessary. I do not want her. That's the whole point. That's why I wouldn't have asked. It's a terrible or dirty secret. Having created the right atmosphere, making sure that both understood that this was a situation that could destroy their marriage, Dave now spoke with more empathy. Okay, B, now you need to help me figure this out. I can't be the creepy or dirty part of this because I still don't know what we're really talking about. What am I not doing for you? What am I so terrible at that you don't even want to give me a chance to improve? What have I done so wrong that you can't tell me about it? And why did I disappoint you so much that you may have decided to look for something on the side without giving me a single chance to correct the situation? Tears flowed from B's eyes in a stream. She sat there with her mouth open, not knowing what to say. Dave raised his hand, indicating that they both needed to take a short break. He collected his thoughts and began again, this time with less venom. I asked you directly if sex was involved here. Every time you simply avoided answering or responded with a joke. B had to concentrate to keep her head from drooping. It seemed to her that she skillfully avoided admitting her guilt. Dave, I don't want to be confrontational. I never want any confrontation with you. Then why can't you be honest with me? Because it will lead to a lot of questions that are very uncomfortable for me. But she raised her hand, to which I want to answer. This is the key. Dave, I don't have any answers yet. When these questions are asked, I must be ready to answer. If I can't, they will give rise to other questions like the heads of a hydra. She looked at him with complete sincerity. Then she placed her hand on his. Each of these questions branches out depending on the answer. Without answers, we will be stuck in endless frustration. This is where I have been for some time now. It's driving me crazy. She shook her head in utter confusion. I'm stuck. I just need answers so we can bring our inevitable conversation to a conclusion. There will be steps I need to take if the answer is not what I want. But there is no doubt that we will take these steps to preserve what we have. B was silent for a second, then looked at her husband point blank. Dave, as strange as it may sound, I am doing all this to remain faithful to. Although these unanswered questions are killing me, we already have the most important answers because I haven't taken any action that could harm our relationship. Dave added grimly for now, beside. She needed to pull herself together and help her husband. Beside and tried to compose herself. She needed to help her husband. Dave, I don't think that's entirely true, and it seems to me that you understand this yourself. I don't sneak out. I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not hiding it. I'm trying to be as honest as possible when I say that I need to leave to answer the question of my own nature. The ultimate goal of this trip is to reaffirm our love. I don't act for selfish reasons. I'm not trying to get something that will only benefit me and be very harmful to you. I try to be the best wife and best friend I can be. I cannot discuss all this now, because the first questions are the same ones that I have been asking myself for some time, and which I cannot answer yet. I need this trip to get answers and understand what to do next. I'm trying not to lie to you, but if I had admitted my doubts earlier, we would have immediately been faced with the very questions that I don't yet have answers to. Dave's face froze. Wait, are you saying that after the trip you will be honest with me? Her eyes widened. Yes, dear, absolutely. I just can't give you the answers until I know them myself. I always plan to tell you the whole truth after the trip. I need this journey to understand what exactly to tell and how to deal with it. If I get the answer I need, then I will immediately get rid of all my doubts. I understand that I should have told you about my doubts earlier, but that would have led us to the same questions, to which I do not yet have answers. Dave, I will be the happiest woman in the world when I can honestly tell you everything. He mumbled, so you're not going to hide this from me forever. B was angry with herself for being unclear. Oh no, honey, I should have explained this. This is an oversight on my part. She took his hands again. Dave, I really expect these questions to be answered this weekend, one way or another. If I wasn't sure of this, I wouldn't have left. As stupid as it may sound, I didn't ask you about the trip earlier because my doctors and I weren't ready until now. I decided a long time ago that I would go as soon as possible. Dave was still trying to wrap his head around the change that was completely changing the situation. He asked a question that wasn't the most important, but was still significant. What if the answer isn't what you want? Bea smiled through her tears, her face lighting up. She had just dealt him a strong blow. And despite this, he tried to help her. I have already prepared for this outcome, because it requires more effort. If the answer isn't what I want, then it's even more important that you know I will need your help to protect us from my weakness. We will definitely have to talk about this. Beside, for a moment her tears stopped. Dave, this isn't about keeping secrets. This is truly about finding the truth and taking all necessary measures so that I remain the wife you want and expect. Although you are right in calling this my secret trip, it is actually a trip to discover the truth. Ooh, that sounds bad, but it's not, I swear. I just want to say that I only need to go away for one weekend to get answers that I can share with you. And with those answers will come a plan of action for dealing with outcomes we might not like. Dave sat heavily back in his chair. Damn, B, this changes a lot. It's a shame you didn't say this sooner. I'll risk one more question, just be honest with me. Dave looked tired and still haunted, but the feeling of doom was gone. B couldn't help but smile faintly. Ask me, Dave, if I can answer. I will. Apparently you are not going rock climbing to overcome your fear of heights. Besides, you would involve me in this. B saw his face turn green from the thoughts that were overwhelming him. I'm not asking what you plan to do, but there aren't many options. If it's causing so much trouble, then it's something that could really make me angry or break my heart. Am I right? B had difficulty swallowing the lump in her throat. Honey, I'm not trying to avoid your questions. I'm still very worried about the possibility that our relationship might be in jeopardy. But honestly, I never thought that this weekend could destroy us. You just saw an example of how I've lost my way. I started planning this trip and didn't even tell you that I plan to be honest with you after it. You think I'm going to hide the affair, but in fact, all this time, most of the secret was to spare you the pain of being suspected of it. I can only imagine the turmoil I put you through. If I explained everything at once, it wouldn't make you happy, but you wouldn't suffer so much. You said there wouldn't be any men there, Dave clarified. B clenched, her teeth. No, Dave, there will be no men. I have the best man. You are the only partner I want, regardless of gender or anything else. Although I understand if after all this you want to somehow punish me, say with a rubber Shetland pony. She tried to smile, hoping that he would understand the joke. Dave didn't smile. He carefully watched what was happening as if he was putting together a picture from disparate details in his head. So if you try something different, I still won't lose you, are you sure? He couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. B began to cry again, seeing how Dave was suffering from these questions. Dave, you have to understand that I don't want to try something different. He pursed his lips, and his brows furrowed in suppressed anger. You never said you weren't going to, and you mentioned that you have questions about your nature. He sighed heavily, louder than he. What are you going to do? Is this going to happen in your hotel room? Be expected to be petrified if Dave got that close to the truth. But now she couldn't afford it. She needed to help. She was silent as she considered her answer. Dave looked at her. He saw her smiling, deciding how to respond. No, Dave, not like that at all, she said, but I might not be in my room. She decided to continue. I expect to be in multiple rooms like an office in a professional environment, in a strict, correct professional environment. I have an appointment with a psychiatrist and will be in her office. She winced. I don't want to mislead you. Everything is more complicated than it seems. This means that I am forced to walk an information tightrope. But everything happens legally. There is no shadow of doubt. I imagine I'll be there for a long time. For a very long time. B said the following with difficulty. The tests could take until the evening. If they can't figure it out sooner. She cowered. It's almost like a CPAP test. I might have to stay overnight. I pray it doesn't, but if it does, it will be in a clinical setting because that's exactly what happens. Dave was chewing on one side of his cheek. He asked a question she didn't expect. What about food and stuff? Since she had told him the basic details of the trip, B saw no harm in the matter. Moreover, she was sure that Dave had already guessed a lot from the pallor on his face. He wasn't hysterical, which was good, but it also meant he was keeping his feelings to himself, which she was sure was a bad thing. I'll stay at the Hilton Hotel downtown, honey. I'll give you the address. It's a block from my doctor's office, so I chose it. The hotel has a small restaurant. I'm not going sightseeing. I think I'll be in the doctor's office, or in my room most of the time. I plan to eat at the hotel. There might be food at the doctor's office as well. What do you want to know, Dave? I want to tell you everything I can without making it worse for you. Well, if all the action isn't happening at the hotel, I thought maybe I could come with you for moral support, to help you calm down if something goes wrong. B felt how torn he was. She carefully told him the news, hoping that he would understand that she was not going to lead him by the nose. But I don't know how long or when I'll be in the hotel room, and I might be an emotional mess when I'm there. She hesitated, shaking her head in gratitude. That's why you want to be there to support me, even though I may be breaking your heart. Oh, Dave, I swear this trip is so that I can come back to you and be even more of you. Dave, I'm not sure your presence would be a good idea. I think you will find yourself in strange circumstances alone, especially if my treatment lasts until late at night. I would prefer you to be here, where you control your life, where you can stay at home or go out, meet friends, do whatever you need. You will be a prisoner in this hotel, and you're all too aware of how long I'll be gone at night. If I have to stay, be looked away. Dave nodded slowly. B, this is a serious question, but I respect your wishes if you don't want to answer them. I recently promised myself that I would not ask such questions, trying to respect your desire to keep everything a secret. But I feel like I should ask. I'm sorry. Forgive you. Oh, Dave, I'm the one who should be asking for forgiveness. If we go through all the usual tests and don't get a definitive answer, and I need certain treatment, I was already planning to throw myself at your feet and ask for forgiveness, explaining all the details. Dave dropped slightly. Well, that might clear things up, but I better make sure I'm in the right direction. He exhaled. B, is your psychiatrist a gay woman? B should have been scared to death. Instead, she felt great respect for her husband, who tried to find a rational explanation in the inexplicable, trying to understand her position, even though she had put a blindfold on him from the very beginning. She reminded herself that he wasn't giving her permission or blessing. He was just trying to understand what he was dealing with. She didn't have words to describe how much she loved him. No, Dave, she's not like that. She is happily married with 3 children and a husband whom she adores. We hit it off precisely because she wasn't like that when she helped me in college. This made our conversation very honest then and continues to be so now. She knows I'm crazy about you. Dave looked so devastated that B's heart sank. He asked, without hiding his sadness, "What do you think I can't give you?" B saw something new: despair and humiliation. No, God, no, I need one thing an answer. I should know. I don't need the physical side. I don't really want her, but I have to find out. I have everything I want and more with you. I know that. But I have already begun to change us. I put us in danger. The secrecy was my attempt to protect us from this. It turned out to have the opposite effect. I thought that if I could really talk about problems, even at their worst, it would be like talking about heart disease. Here's the problem, and here's what we can do to combat it and fix it. On the other hand, if I suddenly said that I have a fear that is driving me crazy, but I don't know exactly what it is, how serious it is, and how to deal with it, this would only increase the anxiety. What kind of conversation could we have? I was afraid that this would lead to what I just saw. You taking on my fear. I have a problem, and you blame yourself. I achieved what I tried so hard to avoid. She looked at him carefully. I made a huge mistake in my calculations. I thought that with your imagination, you would have 1,000 terrible thoughts in your head about why I'm not around. I thought that the truth would be the worst option, and all your fictitious thoughts would be better. These thoughts would distract you from the worst, and then I will come back with a solution, and I can admit to the problem, adding that it will not affect us anymore. B couldn't look at him. Dave, if I tell you the truth, it will free you from the fear of other horrors you have imagined, but it will open up an opportunity that may be insurmountable for you. It may also change your perception of me so much that it will kill your love for me. It was a short chapter in my life, but I hid it from you, considering it a short-term but huge mistake. But now she is making herself known again, biting us on the back. If I tell you, I will relieve you of many fears, but I will give you the same fears that drive me crazy. B caught his eye and bit her lip. Her forehead wrinkled with determination. Her eyes narrowed at the pain she felt and was about to inflict. Dave, I'm afraid that I can love both women and men. If this turns out to be true, I want to confront. I only want to be yours if I have true desires. I need to know how to deal with them. The unknown is killing me. Doing nothing is literally driving me crazy. B blushed at her words. She continued in a much calmer tone. Women look at other women. Even today, the cover of women's magazines most often features a sexy blonde, but things are more complicated for me. We are going to see a film starring an attractive couple. I feel almost as much excitement from the main character as I do from the main character. I know that I love men. I know that I love you, and I know that your touch is magical to me. But fear consumes more and more of my time and energy. I can't stand it anymore. And there is a way to find out. B looked away again. Sorry, I organized all this. Everything is professional. I'm not looking for an acquaintance. This is not an old friend. This is not an old crush, and it won't be romantic. I'm not dating a girl of easy virtue. I've already talked to counselors and therapists. Dave was still confused. But you could tell me all this. It's not just that. You're leaving to have sex, right? Covering her face with her hands, B burst into tears. God help me, most likely, yes. B stole a glance at Dave through her fingers. He wasn't angry, and it seemed terrible. Most likely, this meant that he was wounded. They looked at each other both in pain and B thanked the heavens that they seemed to share that pain. When I started telling you about the upcoming weekend, I realized that I could only choose between two ways to hurt you. I chose the one that I hoped would end faster. My choice came down to a single mystery weekend that I hoped would be a thing of the past versus confessing the desires I feared you'd never be able to forget. Dave nodded in gratitude for her frankness. This is all. Or did we just clear up all the secrets you were trying to hide this week before you left? A sarcastic smile appeared on her lips. Dave, I passed all the tests, completed all the psychological questionnaires that I could take, over the phone, via video or computer. I'm going there to talk to the consultants in person. And if necessary, I will meet a woman, a professional who is trained to help people with sexual problems. It would just be a test to see if I would have a reaction to a woman, and if so, to measure it. Qualified licensed specialists work there. We're not talking about prostitutes or sex services. It won't be anything romantic. I'm not going on a date. If something happens, it will be in a doctor's office. They have special arrangements for this, and it will not be in a hotel room, neither cheap nor expensive. No romance. Dave wasn't angry. He was very worried and was still trying to process everything his wife had just dumped on him. Be begged. Please, dear, this is humiliating. It's horrible. I don't want this to be true. But if it is, there are ways to deal with it. This is my plan. Dave, I wouldn't have come this far if I wasn't afraid it was true. This fear and uncertainty is tearing me apart. It seems to me that I'm already cheating on you, as if I am not giving all of myself to you, because some part of me does not belong to you. If it's true, they can tell me how to deal with it. I didn't touch anyone. I didn't get close to anyone. But I still feel guilty just for these possible feelings. I know I'm usually overly emotional, and so far in our relationship, you seem to enjoy it. Please, Dave, I want to be completely yours. I see how torn you are. That's why I never wanted you to know. I never wanted this to be true. I only want to be yours. When I told you I had a problem, I should have been able to tell you what it was and how I was dealing with it, so you knew it wasn't threatening us. But I don't have the answers yet. Dave looked up, more confused than before. But this is certain, you are going to cheat on me. Just because she's a professional and she's licensed doesn't mean she won't touch you or have sex with you. The doctor's blessing does not mean that it is not treason. It just means it's not low. Dave said this more to himself than to B. Although his words sounded confident, they were far from it. He wondered whether the clinical nature of the story might rule out the betrayal aspect. He probably would have ruled it out if she had told him about it right away, and he would have given his blessing. Damn, this question can tie your brain into knots. He felt sorry for B for what she had to go through. B spoke desperately as her true fear surfaced. Imagine if all this time I was only 90% yours. I have no doubt that I mostly belong to you, a huge part of me. But I want to be completely yours. I can go over the weekend and find out for sure. I pray that after this I can come back and tell you. Oh my God, darling, it was all in my head. I am 100% yours. God, Dave, I crave that certainty, and I want those doubts to never come back. But what really pushes me, what I really need to know, imagine that at the end of this weekend, it turns out that I'm only 90% yours. Suppose they can show me how to deal with those instincts that threaten us, and I can return to 95%. For me, it would be worth all this suffering. What if there are still things I can learn and do to become completely yours? I should know, Dave. I have to try. B looked exhausted. This confession had cost her dearly, although Dave already understood what she was going through, how much she was on the edge. Dave, maybe I was an evil witch or a stupid bitch for excluding you from this decision. I'm sure of one thing. You are a good person, and I'm sure that you are 100% mine. I need to keep my promises. I swore to you to be completely yours, and I must keep that. Dave, I desperately want to be completely yours. I never wanted you to know that you gave your all to me when I didn't do the same for you. But I knew that one day I would have to tell you. And then I had to be completely yours when I did it. The problem should have become a thing of the past when I confessed. B looked like she wanted to throw up. I didn't want you to come with me, so you could see me with someone else if it came to that. I didn't want you to see my disappointment and failure if it turned out that I wasn't completely yours, even if I didn't have to touch another. She hesitated, still looking like she was about to throw up. I was thinking about having a threesome with a woman so that you too would get some pleasure from me revealing my true inclinations. But even that would make you doubt me. And forgive me, Dave, but it would kill me if I saw you with another woman. Even if it were a professional sex service agency, it's not the kind of professional I would probably be with. Of course, I didn't want to go to a bar and look for someone to have a threesome. It seemed too strange, and I was worried about what kind of person would agree to go home after meeting at a bar. But here's what scares me most and goes to the very core of my fears. Imagine if you were nearby and I suddenly realized that I prefer women. I love you so much that you will always win any competition, but you know me so well that you would have caught such a reaction. I understand sex, passion, and intimacy. They follow my heart, I have no doubt about it. Even if I love both women and men, there is no woman in the world who could take me away from you now. I am yours, irrevocably yours. But imagine if I actually responded to a woman's touch. Imagine if I like it. I didn't want you to see this. I never wanted you to doubt me or yourself. Your attractiveness to me. I hope I'm just fixated on this thought, the way you concentrate on a finger with a splinter, not paying attention to the rest of your healthy fingers. If it weren't for the terrible thought that I might ruin your perception of me, I would want you around. Believe me, if this was just a sexual adventure, I would want to explore it with you. But this is not some kind of thrill-seeking. I want to be a complete woman, and I want to be completely yours. I've already crossed the line. I'm going crazy. I'm not telling you this to make you change your mind and let me go. Now that you know what I'm facing, I pray that you don't think any less of me. I feel worse than ever. I'm scared to let you look at me now. B's lips pursed with excitement, her eyes full of pain. Dave nodded and spoke frankly. B, I still have one huge problem with giving you permission to go. Honestly, this is probably exactly what you were most afraid of. I'm afraid of losing you. You won't lose, B said with sincerity and compassion. What if I contradict your nature? Dave's face expressed pain as if he had been stung by hundreds of wasps. She took his face in her hands. I already told you that I love you. It covers everything else, Dave. Everything seems right with you. He winced. I'll feel like less of a man if I let you leave knowing what you might do. My responsibility is to protect you and our family. And most of the time that means not letting anyone else touch you. Let's forget about my masculinity for a moment. I just can't stand the thought of someone else holding you in their arms, touching you, seeing you respond to their touch. I can't stand the thought of you kissing someone, trying to please them. Damn, you'll want to please. Forgive me, B. His head dropped. She had never seen him so depressed. She nodded. No, of course I understand. I'll pack my things and stay. He raised his face to her, shaking his head slightly. But I can't stand the thought of forcing you to live a lie, just as I lay of a lie myself. His lips moved to the side for a moment and then returned to their place as he took a deep breath. I think I need to know the answer as much as you do. B looked at him with wide eyes and an open mouth. Several moments passed before Dave concluded. Besides, you're tormenting yourself mentally, and that can't be allowed. You must be protected from this too. So I agree, B, you need to go to Texas. B was stunned. Did she hear Dave correctly? His words echoed in her ears. She definitely heard him. She also heard the absolute pain and sense of defeat in his voice as he said those words. She closed her eyes. Her torment may be coming to an end. Perhaps she can shed this heavy burden. Damn it! Why was she so weak to succumb to this pressure? But now she could overcome her inner conflict. She couldn't comprehend how much of himself Dave was willing to give to her. He was incredible. She couldn't be more grateful for him. She loved him so much. Oh my God, Dave. Oh my God, Dave. I can't describe what this means to me. It was real torture. I won't abuse it, Dave. Maybe I won't even have to do this. But if I have to, I promise that I will continue, only until I am sure. Even if I feel some kind of reaction, I won't take it as a one-time free pass. I would never do that to you, Dave. Never. I want to be yours, Dave. B rushed to him, hugged him, trying to return to him all the love that he had just given to her. I know this hurts you, Dave, and I won't let it be in vain, not one bit. Please, I need to be yours. Please, Dave, make me yours tonight. During their intimacy, B was happy to be with Dave. But she saw his reaction, or rather the lack thereof, and understood what it meant. His heart was hardly in the process. He betrayed himself to give her what she needed, the freedom to get the answers she needed for their future. It was also obvious that Dave wasn't sure they had a future. He was afraid that she would reveal some hidden truth and lose him forever. B couldn't understand it. Dave loved her so much that he was ready to lose her for her happiness. She knew he was special, knew that he was irreplaceable for her, but this was a whole new level. B simply couldn't find the words to express how wonderful and unique he was, how devoted he was to her. He was willing to rip his heart out and wither away if that's what he thought would make her happy. And so he did. If the test showed that she preferred women, he was ready to leave to give her a chance at greater happiness, although it would cost him everything he loves. She replayed it in her head. Dave was willing to sacrifice everything he loved for what he loved. No, she couldn't comprehend it now, although her heart seemed to swell more and more every minute. B did everything she could to convince him that her final choice went beyond just gender. She chose him. In the end, she knew Dave still wasn't sure, but she did her best. She had a lot of work waiting for her upon her return. Despite her best efforts, she only managed to complete half of her mission. She received permission to find the answers she needed, but she completely failed in the other half. She had failed to protect the man she loved, and now she was leaving him alone with his pain and worries. The contradiction in their actions was striking. Friday morning, B woke up with a smile that didn't leave her face all night. She thought she was married to the perfect man. She was surprised to find that she was no longer hugging the man. She stretched lazily in the bed, arms and legs spread out, waiting for them to bump into her husband so she could hug him again before they had to get up. Suddenly, her eyes opened. Her husband was gone. She rushed down the stairs, grabbing the t-shirt from the chair. As she left the bedroom, she flew into the kitchen and stopped dead in her tracks. Dave was there, looking like he hadn't slept a minute. She knew he wasn't too keen on their intimacy last night. She thought she had made up for his lack of enthusiasm with her energy, perhaps even setting a new record. But apparently her efforts were not enough to quell his worries. Dave looked up and she saw his red, bloodshot eyes. How bad is it, B? Be honest. B looked just as miserable. She moved the chair closer to his place at their small kitchen table. Sitting down next to him, she hugged his chest and rested her head under his chin. I think I'm basically a pretty good girl. But now I'm going to tell you about a time when I had 3 different partners in less than 4 months. This is a huge number for me, especially considering that I have only had 5 partners in my entire life. These 3 college lovers represented my entire relationship during that period. After that, I stopped dating anyone for several years because I was so shocked. I was really looking for Mr. Right after what I went through. She smiled. It took time, but I found you. Dave didn't look happy. B concluded, let me guess you had a good wife who is completely yours. And then she says she wants to go away for the weekend. No questions asked, and hints that she might have sex with someone else while she's gone. And now she's telling you about her past lovers. She shook her head. I'm starting to sound more like an easy girl than a wife. B sighed. Honey, maybe you'll feel better if I tell you that I had 2 partners in high school and only 2 in college, one of which was a repeat from high school. You are the 5th and last if you didn't understand. B immediately regretted what she said. Dave was depressed because her 6th partner was waiting for her in Houston. She would have cursed herself for these words, but she didn't, so as not to draw even more attention to her huge mistake. Dave said nothing bad, nothing good. B could see that he was simply trying to process and cope with the situation. You know the main points of my sexual history. There was a guy with whom I was friends since childhood. We really enjoyed being with each other. As we got older, we realized that what we always did together could now be called dating. We took each other's virginities because it seemed like a natural progression. After that, we both realized that there wasn't much of a spark between us. We stopped dating to maintain our friendship. He was always respectful and protective of me. I think we were both disappointed that we didn't feel something more for each other, but that's how it was. My second partner was my first serious boyfriend. We dated longer. We felt good with each other, but neither of us thought it would last forever. We were a good team. We got along in everything, socially, academically, and yes, physically too. We were different from each other at that time, but not for the rest of our lives. We separated amicably towards the end of our senior year. Dave, in college, I met a guy who I thought was the one. I never said that I thought about him that way because I didn't have time. Events showed me that he was not. In fact, after that one time, I never saw him again. He wasn't interested. He got everything he wanted from me. There is no point in going into details, because if you truly care about a person, you will not leave him so quickly. I was devastated. Thinking that my instincts were extremely unreliable, I turned away from guys completely for a while. Then a man appeared who believed he understood my signals and used this to his advantage. I allowed her into my life because she was a girl. Only girls were safe. What started out as sympathy turned into a strong friendship. I thought that she also experienced the pain of breaking up with her boyfriend, as she told me. She knew how to read my mind and complete my sentences when I talked about the pain my ex had caused me. She awakened in me negative emotions towards him, which she gradually transferred to men in general. She played on my insecurities and said that we girls should stick to each other, thereby gradually alienating me from the boys and putting herself in the role of my protector. She made me drink more and more. I didn't walk. I tried to drown out the pain. We were getting drunk, or at least I thought we both were. After I got drunk, she would take me to her room, where I would pour out my soul to her, become vulnerable, and she would become my confidant. Then she hugged me. I'm used to it. One night while we were hugging, our lips accidentally touched. It was the start of a strange time for me. I see it completely differently now than I did then. She controlled me more than she was a friend. She manipulated me. I spent a couple of months under her influence. At first, I couldn't believe that we were becoming a couple. I had to get blackout drunk so we could kiss because I couldn't do it sober. That should have told me something, but she found a way to break down every barrier I had. Blushing with shame, but with an expression of anger, Be quietly added, I'll tell you all the details you want to know later, but for now, I want to get through this stage as quickly as possible. Be noticed how hurt Dave was. He was afraid that she would use this as an excuse to tell him that she preferred women. Hell, he was still hurt. The best B could do now was to complete her explanation. My friend didn't want me to go home for Christmas break. I needed to go home. I needed it. When she couldn't persuade me, she decided to come with me. I finally insisted on my own. I understood that I had changed a lot, and my parents didn't even know about it. I planned to gradually lead them to this and tell them everything openly next summer. If my friend had gone with me, they would have known right away, and they didn't deserve that. Be stopped abruptly. She told Dave this story after she put him through something much worse while trying to keep her parents from getting hurt. She forced herself to continue. My girlfriend was upset. She was desperate, and her plans fell apart when I finally started standing up for myself. But then I didn't understand it. I went home and met old friends. It was as if my parents and friends filled me with what I had been missing since I went through a devastating breakup. I started talking to some of them about it, which was strange because I thought I had gotten over it a long time ago. I also noticed that I never mentioned my girlfriend. I had something internal that I had to decide for myself. At the New Year's party, there were a lot of guys who had returned for the holidays from our old graduating class. Oh, Dave, that doesn't suit me either. My serious boyfriend from high school was there. We were a great couple. We dated for several months, realizing that we had no future. But in high school, few people think about the future. It remains in a vague perspective, which is only waiting for you to enter it in a few years. This guy was handsome and very courageous. I don't know why I followed him that night, although I was sure that I needed it. We celebrated the new year with enthusiasm. I'm sorry, Dave. Damn, that won't sound good either. It was not so much about him, but about his body, the male body that I loved. But I had a girlfriend who was waiting for me in college. I turned my back on men for women, but I craved masculine energy. I had a lot of questions for myself. Bea raised her head with a guilty expression. Honey, after that I didn't date that guy again because I found the answer. She grimaced and continued. I called the college and was able to change my course for the winter semester. If I couldn't, I would have stayed at home. My original choice was a course with my friend, and that no longer seemed like a good idea. When I returned to college, I immediately went looking for her. Her presence did not make me happy. On the contrary, it made me wary. She saw that I had changed. She tried to make a couple of moves, but her old tricks didn't work anymore. When I mentioned that I was seeking mental help through the course advisor, she knew her game was up. We ended our relationship. She didn't bid me a warm goodbye, but she didn't seem depressed either. I was more of a trophy or property to her. My psychiatrist was kind, and I learned a lot from her. Her conclusion was simple. I like men. She wasn't sure how open I was to women. She said that in most cases, women who find themselves in a similar situation experience strong emotions, which seemed to be my case. She said that my case was almost a classic example of female seduction. She added that at that moment, there were probably dozens of other girls on campus in the same situation. Her firm conclusion was finally cemented when I met you. You didn't just penetrate my barriers, you broke through them. Or perhaps I tore them myself to let you in, and then closed them behind you, leaving you inside with me. This was further proof that the gay college guy wasn't the one. I barely thought about him after we broke up. He was just a lesson. Same thing with the girl who manipulated me. There was only one unresolved problem. Although it did not seem that important, I have never experienced sexual attraction to women before. What I mean is that an attractive person is admired, as most people are. I admit that I find some women simply irresistible. She blushed, and it didn't help that the girl who got me was exactly the type of woman I find most attractive. And I still find it. She blushed again. If even after everything I've been through, this image still arouses my interest, then it's definitely my type, right? Bea couldn't hold Dave's gaze. She continued her story again. This is a popular image in Hollywood. There are several outstanding actresses. I told myself that maybe I was on this little adventure because I had actually loved both girls and men all along, because I find women so attractive. And this classic image of the blonde Grace Kelly makes me weak in the knees. My psychiatrist said that I just like beautiful people, and I was seduced by a predator who was courted by a man who destroyed my heart. She also noted that changing the sex of a partner is a fairly serious step. She said that if I had been gay, I would have noticed sexual attraction to women earlier. She came to the conclusion that I just like charming people, whether they are men or women. And most likely, the guy I fell in love with hit me so hard in the heart that I felt dizzy. Because I reacted so strongly to a man at the New Year's party, I knew that I preferred men. But I also thought that I might be a little more interested in women than ordinary women. However, it was a simple choice to stop dating after being with 3 different people in 3 months. This means that simple sexual attraction to either gender was not such a strong urge for me. All this lost its meaning when you appeared. You passed by and I seemed to float behind you. I'm still crazy about you, and it's on a completely different level than anything I've felt before. Bea paused for a moment to run her hand through Dave's hair and down his arm, then continued. Don't worry, there's not much left. She just looked at him for a few moments. Last year, a new actress appeared who simply amazed me. As often happens at the beginning of her career, she starred in several explicit scenes, including sex scenes. Several of them were quite explicit. You watched them with me, and I enjoyed watching those scenes. Really enjoyed them. This created doubts in me, and they began to grow. They grew until I began to fear that there was some part of me that actually wanted women. I soon began to fear that after that incident in college, I had simply buried that part of myself rather than correcting what had gone wrong back then. From that moment on, I began to be torn apart. Dave, I've developed a real obsession with not giving myself completely to you. Honestly, that's what drives me to do all this. And it turned into a fear that there was something terrible hiding inside me that could betray you. That's when I contacted my former psychiatrist. She told me that just from our conversations, she could see that I was completely devoted to you, but that I was pushing myself to the limit, and that obviously I had not fully dealt with what happened in college. She added that she had mentioned in her old posts that I was prone to overthinking. She said that I just needed to overcome this small shadow of doubt. Bea shook her head, remembering those conversations. Oh, honey, that's easier said than done. I took many tests online, I talked to her and her colleagues, and did everything possible without leaving home. But I still doubt myself. She let out a low, sad sigh, and her eyes filled with tears again. And at one moment, I caught myself satisfying myself and my soul thinking about this actress. My psychiatrist thinks I'm transferring my guilt for not telling you about my past with a woman to the belief that I'm not giving myself completely to you. But I can tell you, Dave, this thought is very real to me. My psychiatrist, in the end, suggested several tests that can only be taken in person. And if they do not provide clarity, she will recommend contacting a professional sex therapist. She assured me that these therapists are not prostitutes and are not selling their services. And for me, it was very important. I'm not happy that I had 4 partners before you. Bea continued, even if 2 of them were disposable. The thought of sexually transmitted diseases makes me sick, and I'm terribly afraid that you might someday suffer from it because I've caught some kind of infection. My doctor assured me that sex therapists work in strictly controlled conditions and undergo regular testing to rule out any illnesses. My psychiatrist said that if all the tests failed, she would arrange an appointment with a professional sex therapist to see how I would react. I resisted this idea, but we reached a dead end. My psychiatrist pointed out the problem very directly to me. I remember her words, "When you are so self-absorbed that you already know that you are doing wrong towards the one you should put first, it is safe to assume that you have reached such a dead end that the only solution is to untie this knot and start from scratch. So I was already hurting you, and the only way to stop it seemed to be to hurt you more. I pray that you give me a chance to start over. I put all my hopes into this." Bea looked at her husband, heartbroken, but with a glimmer of hope. "Darling, now everything has turned into real therapy. My psychiatrist constantly asks me how I feel when I think about my doubts. I respond in different ways. I feel like a failure, a cheater. I feel like there is something wrong with me. But I still can't get rid of these doubts. They also ask me questions about which women I found most attractive. My psychiatrist thinks it's interesting that my ex-girlfriend looked like the actress I like. It's the same type, and I still react to this image. My psychiatrist thinks that this was a huge advantage for the one who seduced me, and that I just like this type of woman. But this does not mean that I am attracted to women in particular. This also seems right to me, so they already eased my fears a little. Finally, I reluctantly agreed to go to Houston, where my psychiatrist could arrange a meeting with another woman if necessary. She constantly asks me how I feel about being with another woman. My answer is always that it's terrible, but I think it might be necessary. In short, I don't want this, but I have to find out the truth about myself. I agreed to see a sex therapist because I thought cheating on you once, professionally, was better than cheating on you emotionally for the rest of my life, even if I never had another partner. I feel terrible for doing you so wrong. Bea turned pale and her face was distorted with self-loathing. And this is where things get really ugly. My psychiatrist believes that it is my commitment to you and the guilt of not telling you about my past that is pushing me to go to Houston and take the final test, and not any desire to be with a woman. Bea clenched her teeth. In self-loathing, explaining, "I feel like I'm already cheating on you just by finding some women very attractive." My psychiatrist says none of my tests showed any real sexual desire for women. She also says that my extremely negative attitude towards being with another woman should be an obvious sign, but my guilt and devotion to you still make me seek final certainty. I don't want to do this, but I feel like I have to. To be honest with you, Bea stared into Dave's eyes. She was seized with trembling, and it seemed that she was about to explode from the growing tension. This means that my love for you pushes me to cut your heart by being with another person. I'm so confused that I have to cheat on you in order to find ways to be faithful to you in the future. To remain faithful, I must first break it. I understand that this is absolutely abnormal. Be screened in despair. She sat there, confused, stunned, as Dave moved closer and wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly to him. When B spoke again, her voice became quiet and weak. I couldn't tell you that sex is excluded on this trip, but I'm definitely not going there for The only person I want romance or intimacy with is you. If I respond to a woman's touch, I intend to spend the rest of my life fighting these instincts to save our marriage. But if I don't answer, do you really want to hear me happily say that I only like men? B shook her head with a bitter smile. You deserve better, Dave. She couldn't bring herself to move away from his protective embrace and look into his eyes to see how she was hurting him. Then she continued quietly. I understand this too. You don't want me to be with someone else. I don't want it either. But how can you believe it when I've come this far and still plan to leave? Especially if it could end up with me being with a woman. Again, it's a double blow for you. The fact that this is happening now and the fact that it happened in the past. Even if everything goes well, you will still have to come to terms with the fact that I once had a relationship with a woman and I never told you about it. I understand this too. While I'm gone, you will be locked in the cage of your fears. You will have to be tormented by the thought that I can find something more basic for myself than you. But that just can't be true, Dave. I follow my heart. Is there anything more important to my heart than you? Dave, you are my heart. B paused, then said hoarsely. But you'll spend the whole weekend imagining me fighting for you and losing. You'll imagine me finding a new level of pleasure in something like a cosmic truth. You will imagine how I realize that a woman can do for me what a man cannot. You will see me in the arms of another, seduced by her mastery, and accept this new reality as my future. Dave, if I really did that, especially knowing that you were here going through hell for me, fighting treacherous demons to free me from my torment, then I wouldn't deserve you. I would be a traitor who doesn't know what love is. Dave, you love me so much, look deeper and find out if you really think that about me. Dave, I'm leaving to deserve you, don't forget this. I thought about all this until I felt dizzy. Even though these sexy women in movies turn me on, I don't really dream about being with them. I dream of being with you. Apart from one shower accident, I imagine the main couple being together, like they do on screen. I don't put myself in their bed. I don't think I would respond to the attention of a medical professional I might be put in touch with. But if that were to happen, do you think I would welcome someone to initiate this as a lover? Or do you think that I would fight her with all my might because she is trying to take me away from my love you? Dave, the more I could feel, the harder I would fight to make those feelings go away forever. Let me fight for you, Dave. Dave asked quietly, do you want me to take you to the airport? There was no emotion in his voice. This was normal for me. She knew how difficult it was for him, but he still allowed her to leave. For her, Dave was a real hero. No, honey, you go to work. I'll take a taxi. I won't be there when you get home, so you don't have to see me or watch me. Leave. I'll be back on Sunday evening. Thank you for believing in me, Dave. I love you. Will you hold me longer, B? His request shocked her. B always loved hugging Dave. It was uncharacteristic of him to ask for this. Wasn't he sure she still liked it? Was he afraid that this would soon change? Or did he remember it as the last happy moment of intimacy between them? B forced herself not to think too much, certainly, but won't that make you late? Yes, no, B thought Dave is not a hero. He's a superhero. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. Dave worked late on Friday night to make up for the morning and minimize his alone time without B. On the way home, he grabbed a meat pizza, which B had never liked trying to get in the mood for a positive time alone. B's day was simple. Get to the airport, fly to Houston, a quick visit to the doctor's office in the evening, and check into a hotel. Tomorrow, a full set of questions, interviews, and tests awaited her. If they are uncertain, she will have to spend the night with another woman. Dave didn't know if it would be an hour of testing or 8 hours. He didn't know if B would just spend the evening with another woman, or if they would spend almost the entire Saturday afternoon together. He didn't know if they would spend time only in bed or between movies. conversations, and dinner. B said it doesn't have to be a date, but you have to create a certain mood, right? A friendly and intimate atmosphere are all the necessary ingredients for this to grow into something more. B called him via Zoom on Friday night from her room. The conversation was so awkward that Dave tried to hide his excitement, but he was sure that B noticed it. After she hung up, he heated up the pizza and turned on the match, trying not to think about her absence. Dave slowly ate half the pizza. He couldn't remember who won and couldn't taste the food. Saturday afternoon, Dave's phone rang. It was B. He quickly walked over to a comfortable chair, plopped down in it, and accepted the challenge. B began hastily, all greetings and banal phrases. He was surprised how many emotions she poured out in the first seconds of the conversation. He immediately realized that this was saying something. She showed no relief. So it wasn't over yet, and more tests meant she would end up in the arms of another. B's tone was concerned, masked by genuine affection and regret. Dave immediately sensed her deep concern for him. Was there already confidence in her voice? Did she already know that she was going to do something that would hurt him? B noticeably slowed down and began to explain his situation. You don't have to worry about anything until dinner. Until this time, there will only be interviews and a final test of aptitudes and attitudes. If they decide that my being with a woman is necessary, then they will make a decision. If you want to call me any time before then, I can answer you as soon as I finish the test. I might even ask one of the staff to talk to you and let you know when I'm free. She tried her best to do everything in her power to ease his suffering. Dave, if you want, be stopped with a sour expression on her face. I can see that this option can lead to either a good or a bad outcome, Dave, so the choice is yours. I can call you and tell you that it's all over and I'm going back to my room to sleep, or he finished for her, or that you're going to spend the night with someone else. At least his voice remained level. Well, yes. B took a deep breath, cleared her throat, and continued, Dave, I think they're trying to normalize this a little bit. I don't think they'll make me grab a quick bite and jump into bed with her. And I don't think we'll have a candlelight dinner before that. But they can plan a dinner for her and me and some of the staff so everyone feels comfortable and knows nothing will go wrong if it does. Final exam, Dave suggested. She nodded her head, smiling at him in gratitude for giving her the opportunity to get out of a gray, difficult situation. Thanks, Dave. I don't think the final exam will be before 8 or 9 in the evening. If I'm wrong, I'll definitely call you. I like this plan. No, wait, Dave suddenly stopped. B was confused, waiting for him to explain what was wrong. Dave spoke with determination and determination. If they do all this, maybe even give you a drink to relax, but not so much that you lose control. Wouldn't calling me reset all the settings they worked so hard to set up? Why would they want you to stress out again by talking to me and feeling my reaction if they've already calmed you down? After all, they want to test your natural reactions. Talking to me before the final exam could ruin their plans. B felt unwell. Dave summed it up. Honey, I don't think they'll want you to call me before you're with her. There is no point in traveling so far to take a test only to have your test result ruined. You need to be confident in your nature. You cannot tilt the outcome in my favor. B felt nauseous. Oh God, Dave, all I did was give you more pictures to haunt you. No, remember, first of all, that although you asked me to allow you to leave, it was I who sent you there to find answers. What? B was truly puzzled. He thought about her. He needed to formulate the thought precisely for B. None of what happens there will be your fault. It's part of your nature and it's not your fault. The rest is up to me. I could have stopped you, but I didn't. Moreover, I sent you myself. Now maybe you understand why I did this. If everything turns against me, it will only be on me, not on you. If you didn't understand it before, understand it now. The point is to find the answers. My decision to send you removes all guilt from you. All you have to do is get these answers. Understand. She was silent for a while. He heard muffled voices as if B had covered the microphone with her hand. Sorry, Dave. The staff here asked why I was crying. They were afraid that you had just made me feel guilty. I took the liberty of quoting to them verbatim what you said. They think you're as wonderful as I am. I don't deserve you. Enough, B. You're ruining the experiment again. Just be incredibly impressed by my generosity and amazing humility. B laughed out loud. B, you gave me something too, knowing that I don't have anything to worry about until the evening is nice. If you hadn't explained this, I would have been in an even worse state for the rest of the day. She wanted to hug him tightly. I can't thank you enough or apologize enough. B, if I don't hear from you before 10 o'clock at night, I'll know what you're up to. Just come home and tell me what you learned, face to face. Even if it's bad news, let me say goodbye in my own way. Yes, B said. It was a difficult moment for her, realizing that the situation was worse than she thought. He will only say goodbye to her if she leaves him to live as a girl who is into girls. She didn't think he was still afraid of it. Dave quickly intervened to keep things from getting too emotional. Hey, if things go this way, you and she can send me home videos to keep me warm on those cold nights in the monastery. A couple of seconds passed before B laughed again. Thank you, Dave. Is it true from the bottom of my heart? That's why I'm here, B. She shook her head as if she couldn't believe it. No, not for that, not this time. This gesture is something more. You're doing the exact opposite of what's best for you to do what's best for me. I will never forget this. Dave wanted to enjoy a light dinner. He decided to treat himself and go for his favorite dish. After driving through traffic to the other side of town for his favorite egg soup, he drowned out thoughts about his situation with the loud radio in the car. He returned home around dinner time. Even after an hour, he could not bring himself to eat. Thank God he didn't order sushi. His phone beeped. He did not expect this message. It was from B. The message read, "Sorry, my love. I found a compromise by contacting you. The doctor said the same thing you said, that talking to you right before the final test would affect the test results. They said what you said, the tests are designed to convince me and no one else, and it would be stupid to interfere with their results. That's why I write instead of calling. It's earlier than I told you, and the final test won't start for several hours. But it will happen. I just couldn't leave you in the dark. We're going to have a late dinner. There will be 4 of us. My doctor, her practice consultant, and a specialist. We will finish work only late in the evening, and after dinner, the 2 doctors will leave. I'm so sorry, Dave. I really love you." Dave felt a cold wave pass through his body. His limbs went numb, and then sensitivity returned. He shook himself and left the chair. Once in the kitchen, he began to walk in circles. He forced himself to stop. Dave thought it over and made sure he was in control. He noticed the egg soup on the warmer and, grinning, took it off, poured it into a container and put it in the refrigerator. Dave thought, clearly she couldn't fight her nature. Who could? Then came a terrible conclusion that he could not escape. Her nature is not me. He stood motionless for a moment, wondering what he could do to avoid sitting idly by while his world collapsed. Dave put the phone on the table. He took the keys and wallet. It was time to go on another trip. With a growing sense of anxiety, he glanced back at the phone before entering the Grollet. "Goodbye, B," he whispered, closing the door behind him. Dave was surprised he was able to sleep at all. Although he felt exhausted, he returned from the trip only after 2 o'clock in the morning. The only thought he allowed himself about his wife was when he walked into their bedroom. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, saying to himself, well, one way or another, no matter how long they go on tonight, the decision has already been made. Now everything is decided and does not depend on me. I have nothing more to do and nothing to worry about. He knew he had done everything he could for B. If he lost her, he would be haunted by many things, but doing right by her would not be one of them. Dave woke up feeling heavy, as if he had spent the entire night on a hospital couch, next to a sick loved one. He trudged into the bathroom, thinking about a funny thing. He and B usually didn't bother with clothes when they had their first cup of coffee on weekend mornings. Now that she was gone, it seemed strange to him to walk naked alone. He had an ally in making the decision, and now only he remains. He wasn't sure if he should walk around the house naked when no one was watching. Was that brave or pathetic? He finally sat down at the kitchen table, rubbing his hands when they weren't raising the trembling cup of coffee to his lips. Then he turned his attention to the phone. Yes, that's right. He left it on the kitchen table before heading out for the night. He needed to leave everything in his life behind to survive the tough night leaving himself and B and everything that would remind him of who he is and what he faces. He noticed the flashing light on the phone. His eyes closed with a characteristic, damn it expression. He had several missed calls. After a quick look, he saw that there were messages too. He started with them. He didn't want to hear B's voice saying goodbye to him this early in the morning. The messages were full of apologies and expressions of love. The last of them contained several important pieces of information. B guessed that he had put the phone aside. She wrote that she hoped he would read the messages or listen to the voicemails because she thought they could calm him down. Dave wasn't sure about this. After waiting yesterday only to receive bad news, he was in no hurry to hear any news today. His attempts to restrain B were not strong enough to keep her from having to take the final test. It was his cold analysis of the situation. He knew he might have been too harsh in his conclusions, but that's how it felt. B sometimes thought too much about small things, and she, of course, sometimes had obsessive thoughts. Perhaps everything was exactly as she said, but he also had his own feelings, and they told him something else. Only B could tell the truth, and he did not believe that she would deceive him now. But what could she tell him? Even the best news would include confirmation that he had lost something valuable, his wife's complete fidelity. Apparently, he didn't make her feel so strongly that she would want to keep it for him. He shook his head again. The day was clearly not going well. He looked at his cup of coffee, wondering what kind of mixer could make it a worthy, emotional painkiller. Another important detail gleaned from the messages was that B would be returning today and not in the evening as planned. She initially hoped that he would be able to pick her up from the airport. In her last message, she wrote that she would go home herself because she did not want to force him to come, knowing that when she saw him, she most likely would not be able to contain her emotions and would cause a scene. Dave wondered what this scene might be like. B knew him well. He preferred quiet and personal drama, and she probably saw no point in spreading his unhappiness to the public, just as there was no need to embarrass her with new life preferences. After all, it's not her fault that she's attracted to women and not her husband. She will come home and explain to him, and they can discuss how to break up. He had a strange thought. Would she move to Houston? Why would she move there? She doesn't know anyone there. Damn it. This means that she will return here where they live. He can't live where she is if she's not with him. He will have to move. Heck, he's going to lose everything, including all his friends here. Dave wasn't vindictive and couldn't be vindictive towards B. Maybe they can divide the property so that he gets liquid assets and she gets a house and a car. He shook his head again. That wouldn't be fair, and the whole damn situation too. Dave decided to go to a gas station. He needed one more trip. Maybe he'll pump up the tires at the same time. Maybe buy a damn egg sandwich. His new lonely life was simply full of joy. When Dave returned home, he was surprised that the house looked brighter than when he left. Sure enough, there were more lights on, and suddenly B burst into the room with a joyful cry, almost knocking him off his feet. She hugged him and pressed her head against his chest. "Darling, it's okay. Everything is fine." B practically saying it. Dave was happy for her, but inside he felt how this joy devastated him. It wasn't going to be released with ease or respect. It looked like it had already been thrown into the scrap heap. "Everything has collapsed, Dave. Everything is fine. I got it fixed." Wow, he thought. 3 exclamation points in a row. This is enthusiasm bordering on a grammatical crime. B suddenly became worried. "Dave, what happened?" She tensed. "Is it really too late? Has my decision to go erased me from your heart?" Dave felt exhausted. He wanted that. If a blow was to happen, it would happen immediately without delay. What are you trying to tell me, B?" B beamed with joy again. "I didn't end up with that woman, Dave." Everything fell apart. He looked at her, not understanding. She saw his tired, dark eyes. She lowered her tone and moved closer, trying to make him understand that she was serious, but she gently grabbed his sleeves. "Dave, I know this is not what my husband wants to hear, but my date was a bust. I returned home, and here's another confession that most men will perceive with conflicting feelings. I like men." Dave sat down heavily, completely confused. His lips moved, but he didn't know what. B was still standing, holding his hands tightly in hers. She announced, "Dave, can't you hear?" We are playing for the same team again. Damn it, Dave, I like guys, not girls. What's wrong with you? What? Dave's dark eyes looked at her, still not fully understanding. He waited for the blow, expecting her to consummate their marriage by declaring that she needed to follow her nature, which was leading her away from him. Be softened, assessing his condition. Dave was exhausted. Last night clearly wasn't easy for him. She did the right thing by returning home as soon as possible. Be sat on his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck and saying softly but happily I was with her. I didn't like it. I couldn't stand even 2 minutes of the 7 minutes in heaven. She was absolutely beautiful, exactly my type, and I didn't like it. Dave shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. It was slowly dawning on him that this was good news. But what did she say? Bea saw it in his expression. She pulled his head to her chest, whispering, "It's over now, darling. If you want. I'll never leave again. You can relax. I'm back home." Later that day, after they had talked, and she had explained the situation to him again, Bea told Dave to sit back and relax. She stopped him when he tried to pull her towards him. "No, honey. I asked for something huge, and now I'm taking something huge. You can prove your case, all you want, but first I have to do this for both of us. I'm going to enjoy and exalt the proud dignity of my man. I am so happy that I like men that I'm going to praise you in the highest order of honor. I will make you glad that you are a man, and I will be happy that it is my manhood that turns me on." After a long time spent together, they finally rose to the surface and realized that they were very hungry. Bea asked the food delivery guy to leave the order at the door. She brought the food inside, quickly throwing on a robe to pick it up from the porch. As soon as she returned to the house, the robe was thrown as far as possible. She wanted to enjoy all the differences between men and women. Bea curled up on Dave's chest, hinting at food, saying that she was there whenever he wanted, clarifying that the only food for her now was him. She felt great in his strong embrace. Long-lived differences. Bea quietly began to unfold her story, further because she promised to tell him everything when she returned home. It was time to dispel any scary images that may have formed in his head after she left. "Dave, I asked to record my time. Hell, I don't even know what to call her. Certified sex therapist, I guess. Everything was recorded on video. It didn't last long. The recording may have been 10 minutes from the moment we entered the room. Of course, I didn't stay there overnight. We talked for 5 minutes because I was still in shock, and our actual interaction lasted less than 2 minutes. However, I thought you might like to see it. I don't think it turns you on, but I thought you might want to explore me. See if there was anything there that might bother you. I didn't expect the solution to come so quickly and so clearly. I am determined to spare you any distress I may have caused." Feeling relieved, Dave replied, "I think I'll take your word for it. Bea, tell them to delete the post." Before Bea's smile could get too wide, Dave asked another question. "What would you do if her touch took you to the skies?" Bea burst into tears. "I would probably destroy the recording and never mention it to you. But Dave, we have a happy ending, and I'm not sure that discussing a theoretical situation that scares me and makes me feel like I'm being unfair to you is the best way to use our energy. We have a great resolution, and I'm being completely honest with you. I'm also sure that if things had gone worst-case scenario, destroying this record would have been the most dishonest thing I could have done. I would still tell you everything that happened. I just wouldn't force you to watch. Dave, I always knew you were my soulmate. I never intended to leave you." They lay silently on the living room carpet, leaning against the sofa on a pile of pillows, taken from it. "Dave, this sounds weird, but do you want to see a photo of the medical professional I was connected with?" Bea cringed from her own awkwardness. She watched his face. Dave was smart. He understood everything. His wife touched this woman. They kissed with their lips. She saw his pain expression deepen. Dave thoughtfully replied, "I think I need to know your type. You may want me to keep you away from anyone who looks like her in the future, but I'm not sure. I need to see her specifically. Maybe just a photo of her, but not the two of you together." Bea realized that she had been holding her breath all this time. She wanted to thank Dave for his wise decision. Instead, she gave him a big kiss on the cheek. Then she jumped up and ran out of the vault. She soon returned carrying 2 women's magazines. Each cover featured a rather striking blonde. Both women clearly belonged to a certain style that could be called elegant country hunting. Style something like Philadelphia or Baltimore. I see he smiled at her. We have similar tastes. The wife blushed to the roots of her hair, then her face took on a worried expression. The first model was tall, curvy blonde in a classic retro style. Bee's hair was long but brown. Her forms were noticeable but not nearly as expressive. If this was Dave's type, she certainly didn't fit that description. The second model was closer in proportions to herself, but being a model, she still stood out, for the better. She was also a dazzling blonde. Anxiety gradually showed on Bee's face. Dave had a type, but he married a woman who didn't fit that description. And now she's put all this burden on him. How much has her value fallen in his eyes? Bee tensed. If she didn't suit Dave's taste, and felt so uncomfortable, what did Dave feel when he feared she preferred the classic blonde movie star? Dave, of course, did not look like either a socialite or a girl with an ideal appearance. Seeing the tension building on her face, Dave hugged her, dispelling any bad thoughts that might have crossed her mind. Her fears melted away in his arms. It was decided that my being with another woman would be the ultimate test. Bee continued. You should know that the therapist was already confident in my nature, but I continued to doubt. This bothered me for a long time. Bee lowered her eyes. My interaction with the surrogate. Damn, that's a terrible way to... No one can replace you, and I'm going to prove it. Dave encouraged her to continue. Honey, she was beautiful. Bee felt her stomach twist. She was gorgeous, exactly the type of woman who made me doubt myself. The consultants listened to me well and provided me with one that became my main test. She pointed to the magazine covers, inviting him to look at them. As I said, our interaction lasted 3 kisses and 2 touches. Less than 2 minutes overall, but it felt like we kissed softly, just on the lips. I was able to endure it because it was just a new feeling. Women have really soft lips. For a short time, it was just a new sensation with no meaning. But when she kissed me the second time, she caressed my breasts over my clothes. I shuddered. We drifted apart a little, but she was going to take the next step. She opened her robe and mine a little. When she kissed me for the 3rd time, she put her hand on my chest under my robe. I've had breast exams that were more intimate, but I didn't like them either. The last straw was when she took my hand and put it on her chest at that very moment. But fell silent, waiting for Dave to focus on her words again. She knew she was overloading him with... He was clearly not happy, and his pain increased with every word. Bee continued quietly, and I couldn't stand it any longer. I pushed myself back and accidentally fell off the bed we were sitting on. I accidentally slipped and fell on the floor. If I bruise, it will be because... Dave, Bee said worriedly, her voice slowly taking on a cheerful tone. I didn't like this at all. I mean, it was disgusting. I couldn't bear it. My stomach churned and I ran to find a trash can in case I was going to throw up. The surrogate or professional or nurse, I don't know what to call her, laughed and said that both she and my consultant expected this exact reaction. She said that since I continued to doubt myself, they decided that the best way to convince me would be to experience it through my body and mind. And they turned out to be right. She said I was absolutely normal. I just had an overactive mind. I told her that you might think my mind is underused or faulty after all this. I actually threw up. At that moment, she explained to me what I just told you. She also said that although she did not find it difficult to work with both men and women, she preferred men and was married herself. After she said this, I no longer felt threatened by her touches. It was like caring, like a woman helping a sick child. I no longer felt anything romantic or sexual in her touch, even though just a few moments ago, the same touch had made me vomit. Now I am absolutely convinced that I have no hidden bisexual tendencies, but I definitely have a brain that can get wrapped up in itself. I'm so sorry I put you through all of this, and darling, I think you're the kindest, strongest, most generous person in the world for letting me go so I could learn this lesson. It was as if I had hypnotized myself. Now I am cured, and I'm completely yours. Now my biggest worry is that you will not consider this a sufficient reward after everything I have done to you. Bee caught his eye again, pointing to magazine covers of women with full lips. Now I know that although I find those lips attractive, I don't want to kiss them. I almost convinced myself that I wanted it. Forgive me, Dave, you married a little crazy. She stepped back and looked at him with pride and admiration, almost all. Dave calmly replied, You also did your best to protect us. I appreciate it. You went to medical professionals and didn't try to find a woman in some club who would only dream of seducing someone's wife. He added, Who knows how she could manipulate you to drive a wedge between us. Bea shuddered, remembering her student years. She quickly worked on the phone, then handed it to Dave with a photo on the screen. This is my nurse in everyday life, with brown hair. It's hard to see her figure in her medical uniform, but she is still very attractive. Not a supermodel, but with a flat tummy and feminine hips. She has normal breasts without any... In short, she's not trying to be a fantasy, she's just a real woman. Bea hesitated. She dyed her hair blonde especially for me. Later we held hands, but more like friends. We both laughed with relief and joy that I finally had answers, and my life was safe with you. I then burst into tears, realizing this, but I still felt a little embarrassed that she dyed her hair. She said it was no big deal because her husband was delighted with her temporary change to blonde. We both smiled at this topic. We both love our men. Bea shed tears. I'm so sorry. I put you through all this. I'm so afraid that I've created some kind of unhealed wound in your... Dave ran his hand through her hair, gently replying, Let's start by checking other parts of my body and gradually work our way to my heart. Bea timidly suggested, Do you want me to go blonde or red for a month or two? He smiled at her. That would be fun. I'm guessing you're talking about dyeing your hair and not working on a threesome theme. Bea looked reliably confused. If that's what it takes to make you forget about this whole episode, I'll do it. I mean threesome. She looked very nervous, especially seeing the sly smile appear on his face. I have an idea. These fatal blondes have caused you a lot of problems. They have some kind of power over you. Bea nodded grimly. Why don't you go blonde for the next month, completely getting into character? Don't let them haunt you. Instead, become what you yourself desire. This will give you control over your story. If you expect some special behavior from blondes, we can play it out together. Just the two of us. And then if you don't want to stay like this, just let your natural, wonderful hair grow back, and I'll forget that blondes even exist. Bea was amazed. So this is brilliant, damn. I probably should have come to you with my problem in the first place. You would have solved them without all this drama. She immediately changed her tone. I will always come to you first. I promise I will never hide anything from you again. Agreed, Dave said happily. But be prepared based on what you consider to be the arousing behavior of blondes. I'm going to put your bombshell persona to the test. Is it true? Is that all? Just me and Madison Reed hair dye, and will you stay with me? Haven't we had enough difficulties with other women? Moreover, I will accept you as if you were a stranger. Bea just looked at him and moaned. Damn it, Dave, you're driving me crazy. Well, that's what I'm going to do.